Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it, as always. So, just a quick word. My the view of my chat's going to be messed up tonight. Something happened, so I apologize for that. But I can basically, I think, most of the time see what's going on D Live and on YouTube. So I'll try to follow. But yeah, we're going to be doing some Super Tuesday business, which I have to tell you, I could honestly kind of care less about. I'm not, look, I know more about the general election than I do about the primaries and things like that, and exactly how the archaic democratic primary process works, and just how they'll try to use what they can to screw over Bernie. But away we go, we'll talk about it. So thank you everyone for being here. If I miss your chat, I'm just having some technical issues tonight, so think nothing of it, but I do really appreciate everyone being here. And let me see, just real quick, I'll check, and I'll start the podcast here shortly. So, yeah. Let's see what it says. Just checking something real quick here. What had happened was, me being the meathead I am, trying to bring up things so I could check out live results of Super Tuesday, etc., etc. I ended up screwing up the chat and all that good stuff. So here we go. Rob making more mistakes again. So I'll switch back from D Live to YouTube, but I'm probably going to miss a lot of what's going on in the chat tonight. So yeah, the agenda is I'll go through some of the Super Tuesday stuff. When I get bored with that, I'll talk about other stuff as I want to do. It's the beauty of having your own show. I could be as loosey-goosey as I want, so I plan to be. But no, I thank you all for being here, and I think there are some interesting things to talk about tonight. So without further ado, I do want to say real quick before I start, thank you so much to Big Sky Crypto, who donated $10 to me last night. That money's really appreciated. And also, thank you so much to a person by the name of Jay, who became my newest patron. I see Milo's in here. It's one of my patrons. Big Skies Crypto's also a patron. Killer Kyle's a patron. And Dib Siverex, another one of my patrons. So thank you to all of you people. Your support really does help. I really do appreciate it. So without further ado, I'm going to start the podcast. Oh, one more thing, quick thing. I'm going to put a video up, just a real quick one about this. I'm looking for a volunteer who would really, really, really help me with my channel. This will be on YouTube specifically. And what I'm looking for someone to do is, after I do a live stream, to watch and timestamp what I was talking about at each time. So if I switch from if I start talking, an intro, and then 7 minutes in, I start talking about Super Tuesday, put that. And then if I start talking about, Bernie specifically at marker 20, put that, and then I'll make your comment the top comment section. If someone's willing to do that, if not, no pressure. But yeah, if someone's willing to do that for me, I'd really appreciate it. So, all right, without further ado, I'll start the recording for the podcast. Hey everyone, thank you again for being here for the Normal America podcast. It should be a good one. We're talking Super Tuesday today and what's going on. So we'll get to what we see going on live as it's occurring, and then I'll kind of give my broader thoughts what's going on and maybe ramble about some other stuff. So thank you all for being here. It's really appreciated. So as we stand now, it looks like early in the evening that it's actually a good night so far for Biden. Now that comes with caveats. The big caveats being that right now we currently have the two biggest states with the biggest delegates, and Texas and California is still out, and it still looks like there's a good chance that Bernie's going to end up winning those states. Though I think Bernie's probably biting his nails a little at that Texas is more competitive than maybe he would have expected, with some results coming in. But right now, everything's basically as predicted, except Biden's done slightly better everywhere, I would say, than was predicted. Also, there's the great story that Bloomberg took the American Samoa. Whoopee! He spent $500 billion. He could have bought the island of the American Samoa for that much. But, it is what it is, I guess. I'd like to think that if I spent $500 billion, I could get more than just 4 delegates. I could have at least won Georgia or something, right? But Bloomberg, it's kind of funny. In one way, despite the insanity that we see from this primary process for the Democrats, On one hand, though, it is kind of comforting to see that we still don't live somewhere where just sheer no-talent politicians just spending more money than everyone else by a landslide still isn't enough to just straight up buy the election. So right now I'm looking at the place that matters, which is Texas. Right now, Bernie Sanders has 28% of the vote. Joe Biden has 23% of the vote. Now, my understanding is if you meet that 15% margin, then you're able to get some delegates of that state. It's not just winner take all in these states. So it looks like Biden will meet that here, and he'll probably meet that in California as well. So let's get back to talking without looking at the results so much right now. So checking D Live, going back, checking YouTube. My prediction was this, and I'm not some genius that made this prediction, but if you watched my just 1 minute plugging this show tonight, what I said was I predicted that Bernie Sanders would win the states he was predicted to win, but Biden would do enough that it would show that he's kind of the establishment candidate that they're going to coalesce around, and that ultimately there would be no definitive winner coming out of tonight. And I think that's exactly what we see, which is ultimately very, very, very bad news for Bernie Sanders. Because if it becomes a brokered convention, there is zero chance that Bernie Sanders wins. So for those of you who don't understand the process, and again, I'm no expert in this, but what happens is if you don't get someone to reach the amount of 1,991 delegates, I believe that's the number they use, which is, I think, just slightly more than half, then the convention becomes brokered. If someone clears that threshold, then they're the Democratic nominee. It looks increasingly like that won't be the case. Because what that means is basically Biden did enough along with all the other candidates, because remember, there's a bunch of candidates in early states. Even today, we see with early voting, there are candidates that got other delegates. And so that means that it will be unlikely for one of them to reach that threshold of 1991. It doesn't look like neither Biden nor Bernie pulled ahead enough that it's going to be likely to do that. Now, there's still many states to go, so this could change, and who knows with our gaffe-ridden candidates here, what could happen in the future. But it seems to me that it's likely that there will be a brokered convention. Now, brokered conventions are notoriously corrupt because what it is basically delegates that aren't committed selling their votes to the highest bidder. There is no way the establishment Democratic Party will allow a brokered convention to go to Bernie Sanders. None at all. You think the coin flip, you remember the coin flip? You think that was bad? Screwing over Bernie? Screwing over people like that? You think that was bad in Iowa? Wait until you see the shenanigans that will occur at a brokered convention. Look, the secret's out. I've talked about this even in my live stream last night. The Democratic Party is now fractured into two complete separate wings. You have the Bernie bros, the progressives, the social justice warriors that tend to be younger millennials. They engage in cancel culture. There's a lot of extremism that comes with this. It's a large embrace of socialism. They're even leading towards communism. They have no problem trying to win by any means necessary. They're vocal. They're indignant. That's who they are. Now, they have a right to be vocal and indignant because they were screwed over in 2016. And a lot of these voters, look, I don't endorse the extremism, but a lot of these young people, regardless of what you think, they have a right to be upset. The system screwed them over as well. So there are a lot of people that see, hey, this system screwed me over, and it's populism. Just like there was populism on the right that ended up endorsing Donald Trump. So I see a lot of that with Bernie and the people that support him. But there is a lot of crazy extremism that goes on there too. Not saying all Bernie supporters. I know some Bernie supporters that aren't a fan of that kind of extremist tactics and things like that. But we can't deny there's certainly a vein of that running through Bernie and his supporters. And Bernie kind of dog whistles to them. I hate that term, but you know, when he's excoriating his campaign when they make fun of DNC members, but it's totally silent when his campaign workers talk about throwing Trump supporters in gulags. Huh, isn't that odd? Then you have the establishment Democrats. That's the corporatists, the oligarchs, the people that run the show. These are the people that are going to win. I knew Bernie wouldn't get the nomination. You know how I know that? Because they're the movers and shakers that control our government. This is the same group of people that had a coup against Trump. It's the intel community. It's the shadow government. It's all of the executive agencies that are constantly leaking to harm Trump. It's the mainstream media. It's the establishment Democratic Party. It's the billionaires that donate to the Democratic Party. That's their wing of the party. Now, theoretically, if you really were a socialist, if you really were someone who hated the billionaires, then you would hate the Democratic Party even more than the Republican Party because the elite The wealthiest of the wealthy tend to vote Democrat. They donate to the Democrats, and that's because the Democrats are the establishment. They're the bigger face of the establishment party. That's not to say there aren't establishment people on the right. There clearly are. I talk about them all the time. Your Mitt Romneys, your John McCains, your Jeff Flakes, etc. But clearly, the Democratic Party is the face of the establishment, of the globalist, of the corporatist. And they're not going to let Bernie win. They like the socialist idea. They like the idea of erasing the middle class, which socialism will do. The globalists love that. I tell you all the time, the middle class in the United States and other countries that we call in the West and like first world countries, the middle class in those countries is the biggest impediment to full-fledged globalism. What they want is San Francisco. What they want is LA. They want a return to feudalism where there are no national borders or national pride. There's them, the wealthy elite that live in their high castles, and then there's the rest of us that are serfs that beg to them for food and bread and sustenance. But we work the land around these castles, and they sit above us as gods and kings. That's what they want. That's what the globalists want. And socialism's a fantastic way to get there, because it totally erodes the middle class. But they don't want Bernie's particular brand of socialism, right? So what they want is massive government control. And I tell you all this time, one of the things with Bernie and people that kind of coalesce around him is they're right to point out that there's problems with income inequality. There's problems with, people that run these large corporations behaving in an unethical manner, abusing the government in order to unduly enrich themselves. That's not every wealthy person, but certainly there's a reason to be upset. We need look no further than the 2008 banking crisis to see that these people in the banking industry under George W. Bush and policies that continue with Barack Obama scammed us, the average normal American. They gambled with our money. They lied to us. They said that the mortgages that they were selling were A-plus mortgages when they weren't. They were mortgages they knew would never be paid back, but they still sold them to the companies that do our 401ks, and then a bunch of us normal Americans went bankrupt while these bankers made money hand over fist, and as soon as they were caught with their hand in the cookie jar, they were bailed out again by us bankers. That's what happened. Barack Obama was supposed to be someone that the left, the Bernie-type supporters now looked at and said, go get those bankers. And instead, Barack gave his famous speech where he went to the bankers and said, I'm the last thing standing between you and the pitchforks. Remember that? That's who the Democratic Party is. That's what the establishment Democrat Party is. See, they're working with these bankers. They're working with these corrupt oligarchs. And I tell you all the time, the way to stop money in politics isn't to go after the people giving money. It's to stop the government's ability to accept the money. And I don't mean, overturn Citizens United, because something else will just bring up a new loophole. The way you do that is by making government smaller. By making government so limited that it doesn't matter if you lobby them, if you give them money, because they can't pick winners and losers. Currently, the system's so convoluted, I think I'm a reasonably smart person. You could barely begin to make heads or tails of it. It's that convoluted. Look at our Federal Reserve. Look at how Trump's up there today saying, we need to lower rates. Look at all this stuff. It's all designed to be complicated to screw over the normal American. It really is. It's taking money from you, it's taking money from the working middle class, and it's giving it to the rich so that they could give it to the very poor. That's socialism. That's what they want. So of course they like that idea, but the problem is Bernie's engaged in a different level of socialism, right? So that type of socialism, which is not really socialism, it's just oligarchism, corporatism, where they take money, siphon it from middle America and give it to the rich. That's the Democrat establishment. That's Zuckerberg. That's LA. Them living, they tell you how immoral you are for not caring about poor people when they do. Meanwhile, they're stepping over people defecating in the streets to get to their $1 million homes. But you're the problem. You in middle America, you're the problem. You, the average person. It's you. Your fault. You're a bigot. You're terrible. You need to give more of your wealth. Not Zuckerberg. Not Bill Gates. Right? Those people. Oh, no. Not Bernie. But again, when I say Bernie's a little different because their contempt, the oligarchs' contempt, is directed squarely at you. And it's not even contempt, really. Though they make no mistake about it. They do have contempt for normal America. But it's more a strategy. They know how to get where they want to go, which is this globalist idea of erasing the middle class. They know how to get there. So this is just a stepping stone for them. Bernie actually does have hate. Bernie hates anyone with 10 cents more than him. And this is the traditional socialist path. Where, and I've had this debate hundreds of times literally with people that claim to be socialist. Their wealth is always, they are moral. How they obtain their wealth is great. The amount of wealth they have is totally morally justified. But anyone with a dime more than them, they're corrupt. They're terrible. They're oligarchs. They need to give up their wealth. The system's corrupt that allowed them to get this type of money. That's who Bernie Sanders is. That's what's going on. See, Bernie used to say millionaires and billionaires were immoral. Now he just says billionaires are immoral because he's a millionaire. And if he ever becomes a billionaire, then he'll just say trillionaires are immoral. Now, I want you to look at the difference between wealth and living standards of Bernie Sanders compared to Mike Bloomberg. Now, certainly Mike Bloomberg has money well over, exponentially more money than Bernie Sanders, right? But look at what money means and how the quality of life that it entails. Do you think the quality of life of someone who's a very wealthy millionaire compared to the quality of life of someone who's a very wealthy billionaire? Do you think that gap, even though the numbers are bigger, and you could say Bloomberg has way more times the wealth than Bernie, but their quality of life and how they live and the challenges presented by money, do you think that gap between Bernie and Bloomberg is bigger than, say, the gap between a normal American and Bernie Sanders? I live paycheck to paycheck. If I get sick or hurt for something with work, I'll have trouble paying my bills. I'll have trouble paying my mortgage. That's how 95% of the people I personally know in life live. Now, it's not good. I can understand those people that might even say, hey, I want to vote Democrat. I disagree with them, but I understand being upset and saying, I want a candidate that'll help me. I go to work, why do I have to live paycheck to paycheck? Look, we should all take personal responsibility. There's all things we can do, but let's not act like because of our elected leaders in both sides, we've outsourced the wealth of this country to wealthy oligarch type people and overseas to places like China. That's what we've done for 50 years. We screwed over the American worker that made this country great, that was the backbone of them, and we enriched rich people in foreign countries. Just like, remember the whole impeachment stuff? We're sending billions of dollars to the Ukraine, who then in turn hires people connected to the politicians who voted to send that money and gives them millions of dollars in return. In other words, it was just a money laundering scheme to take your taxpayer dollars and give it to the children of John Kerry and Joe Biden. That's what was going on there. And that crap happens over and over again. You think it's bad in the Ukraine? Wait until it comes out what's happening in China. And that's bipartisan, baby. That's both parties doing that. Not everyone in both parties, but at the top level, that's what's going on. So I understand being upset and wanting to vote for someone you think could help you out as a worker. But Bernie's a hypocrite when he looks at things and says, oh, these people are immoral that amass so much money. Well, why can't I think then, if I use the same logic, look at Bernie and say he's immoral? What's the difference? The difference between how money impacts my life and how money impacts Bernie's life, it's far greater than the difference between how money impacts Bernie's life and how it impacts Bloomberg's life. So if he looks at Bloomberg and says that's immoral the way Bloomberg's living, why am I not allowed to look at Bernie and say the same thing? And then why can't a homeless person look at me? Look, I can him and haw all I want about being a poor person. I own a home. Granted, I make a mortgage payment. I own a computer. I work full time. I'm not missing many meals. I don't know if you can tell. So why couldn't, by the same logic, that homeless person look at me and say, this is absurd? Look at your content. Look at your wealth. So it's totally arbitrary where you make this. Once you start saying there is an amount of wealth that makes you immoral, then it's just a matter of where you set that line. Every single argument that Bernie makes as to why Bloomberg's immoral, someone could easily make that exact same argument applies to Bernie Sanders. Bernie's flying on private jets. Bernie's driving around in fancy cars. Bernie has 3 homes. Is all that necessary to live? Of course not. There's a lot of excess there. Why is it okay for Bernie? Now, again, if you don't want to make it a moral argument, if you're just talking strategically what's best for the United States, fine, I'll hear your argument. But Bernie couches his socialism in terms of morality. And we can see that that's a joke. He's a hypocrite. And that matters because you're talking about increasing the government power in the United States at one point more than it's ever been increased before. Read the Green New Deal. I talked to people, they said I was exaggerating when I said, I'm no expert. When I just look at plans that Bernie suggested and use his numbers generously, We're literally talking over $100 trillion in the next 10 years. Literally. Go read the Green New Deal. One of the things it says in the Green New Deal, I'm not making this up, that Bernie Sanders endorses, is that every building in the United States will be completely overhauled to be able to have an infrastructure that runs off of clean energy. Now, I live in rural Pennsylvania. In my little town that I live in, I estimated maybe, conservatively, let's say 200 buildings. Many of them houses, also many dilapidated buildings, also things like garages, just a handful of businesses. Now, I figure my home alone would cost, let's say generously, $10,000 to $20,000 for them to make those updates. That's one home. Let's say that generously is the cost for every building, 200. That means in my town alone, you're looking at close to $500,000. Just in my town, that one town. Now, there are literally tens of thousands, if not more, towns like this across the state. Where are they coming up with this money? This is nonsense. This is monopoly money type crap. They want to completely have government control of the energy sector, which would be a large chunk of the overall economy. They want to redistribute wealth based on racial characteristics. This is all in the Green New Deal. And then I have people on Twitter, Bernie supporters, telling me, oh, no, it's not like a socialist dictatorship. It's not like that. It's not like Bernie could wave his magic wand and do all this stuff alone. Well, it's not just Bernie, is it? The Green New Deal, or some form of it, was endorsed by almost every single person running for president under the Democrats. It's endorsed by much of their congresspeople, both in the House and the Senate. If they get power and they enact something like that, that is a socialist. Call it what you want. I guess it was voted for, so it's not a dictatorship, but it's complete control over our economy, complete control over our energy sector, racial redistribution of wealth, and the end of the middle class. But needless to say, the establishment doesn't want Bernie. See, they know Elizabeth Warren or even, not AOC, not Ilhan Omar. That's why they're expendable. They're terrible, don't get me wrong. But the corrupt globalists don't really like them because these people, say what you will about them, they believe they're garbage. When they say they don't like billionaires, they mean it. Probably because they're jealous. Again, I talk about this a lot. George Orwell, when he wrote the book, The Road to Wigan Pier. And by the way, I got this from Jordan Peterson, so don't think I made it up myself. But he talks about Orwell was a self-proclaimed socialist who realized in writing that book that the socialists around them, it wasn't that they liked the poor, it was that they hated those that had more than them. And so they used the poor as a mechanism to browbeat those that had more than them. That's who these socialists are. That's who the Bernie Sanders of the world are. If they weren't, and here's the litmus test, because not all socialists are like that, right? There could be an actual, genuine, good-hearted socialist that's not a hypocrite. But here's the test you run. Are they living beyond their means? Are they engaged in the very things they criticize you about? Do they tell you you should basically have open borders while they live in gated communities? Do they tell you you shouldn't have access to firearms while that they have guards with firearms? Do they tell you that your light bulbs and your vehicle's bad, that you're struggling just to get to work while they drive away in fancy cars and ride private jets? Do they say that your wealth's ungained while they have lake houses and third homes? Yes, all of these socialists that we're talking about do. Remember when AOC was confronted and they said, why don't you take the subway? That would lower your carbon footprint. Well, it was inconvenient for her. She's an important person. She can't reduce her carbon footprint because it's important for her to have convenience. Unlike you. Screw you. Her job's important. What do you do? A farmer? A welder? A truck driver? Or whatever your job is. That's not important. AOC's important. Bernie's important. They're doing the real work that makes our country great. I disagree. But that's how they feel. But they'll use you. They use people that are poor to say, we have a moral obligation. But really all they want to do is go after the people with more than them. And the establishment Democrats know this. That's why they coalesced around Biden. Because it's all hands on deck to stop Bernie. So then me, as someone who's not in the Democratic Party, now granted, admittedly, I'm a Trump supporter, I'm a conservative, right? Well, no one voted for the Green New Deal yet, but they've embraced it. So what we have is an outsider. Granted, I'm on the right, but if you were totally objective and you're independent and you're looking at the Democratic Party, this is what you see. You see two evils that are the branches. Well, evil's not a good word. Two terrible things going on in the Democratic Party. You have the wing that I talked about of the Bernie, the socialists, the progressives, the cancel culture, the infinite genders, the guilty until proven innocent. That branch, the Bernie Sanders, everything's racist. You can't clap because it's triggering. You have to finger snap. Safe space is needed. You got that branch. And then you got the, yes, you're still guilty until proven innocent unless you're one of us elite. And we want massive government. We want globalism. We're corrupt. We'll use the intel agencies to spy and do what we want. We control the media and we'll use them to make sure that your vote doesn't matter. We hope that all middle class is wiped out and becomes our serfs. That corrupt establishment wing of the Democratic Party. Now, I still hate that corrupt establishment more. But both of these sides are terrible. And what I was trying to do last night is reach out to both of those sides. If you're a Bernie supporter, do you see how Bernie's getting screwed? Do you see how it's happening? Do you see how the media is going all in on Bernie being a sucker and not wanting to vote for Bernie? And now endorsing Biden? Do you see how that's working? Does that aggravate you, how the media is corrupt like that and they're not real journalists? Are you starting to see, based on today's results, the early results, how impactful that is? How an should-be infirmed old man who's losing his faculties in the name of Joe Biden, who has no idea where he is, he's calling people that vote Democrat horse-faced women. He can't even get together a quote. He says he's going to run for Senate. He's going to appoint the first black woman to the Senate. He has no idea where he is half the time. He switches his votes on a day's notice. He yells and screams at the debate that he's created I wrote that bill, when it's just blatantly not true. That guy's winning. That guy's going to beat your guy. Because at a flip of a switch, the people that control the narrative are so powerful in the mainstream media, in academia, in the entertainment industry, in Silicon Valley. They're so powerful that they could take that guy, an old man losing his faculties who basically has no idea where he's at. They could take that guy and put him ahead of the person you've been adamantly supporting for 3 years. Do you see how that works? Now, just for a second, Bernie supporter, if you're listening to me, just imagine for 1 second, what if that same corruption was used to brainwash you like it is for these Biden supporters against Trump, against conservatives, against Trump supporters? Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't you feel like a dupe and a rube that these people that you trusted when they were going after Trump, Hollywood and academia and the media and the DNC and Silicon Valley, you trusted them when they were saying, oh, Trump's a Russian stooge. Oh, Trump must have committed sexual violence against women. Oh, Trump's a racist. You believed them. Now that same crime's happening to Bernie and you're like, I'm not asking you to vote for Trump. You clearly don't like the guy, and that's fine. But you're going to continue to support these people, the same corrupt people that screwed Bernie in 2016. And Bernie, if you're listening, before you go on stage and declare victory tonight, I know you're not listening, Bernie, but if you were, let me give you a word of advice. You see, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And for 3 years, you pushed the Russia collusion hoax. For 3 years, you pushed the intel agencies and the mainstream media and the entertainment industry, all of them, saying that Trump was a Russian asset, that Trump needed to be impeached, there needed to be investigation after investigation into Trump. Now that same crap's being used against you. Now, if you would have been listening to me, Bernie, you would have known that that would have been used against you. And you would have said something like this for 3 years. I don't like Trump. I think he's a terrible person. I think his policies are terrible for this country. But we need to stop pretending that this Russia collusion hoax stuff is real. Then you would have seemed like you were someone with integrity. But you're not. You're a hypocrite. And once more, you've outed yourself. And so now, the very corrupt establishment that you've helped prop up ever since you dropped out in 2016 and endorsed Hillary Clinton, that same establishment is screwing you again tonight. That's what's going on. So I'm not going to change Bernie's mind, but if you're one of the Bernie supporters, I told you in 2016, you should have been supporting Trump. You could hate Trump and you should have still been supporting him, even if you want a good Democratic Party. Because the corruption at the top of the Democratic Party is so systemic, it's so running throughout the party, that you will never see someone as a progressive Democrat that they will ever let win that isn't totally under their thumb. And so the best thing you could do is hope that they get crushed so bad that maybe then they'll learn their lesson and leave the voters actually have a say. That's what you should have been doing. But instead, Orange Man bad. And so you cheered for the very people that are screwing you over more than anyone. What's Trump done to you? Nothing. He's been your biggest ally in fighting the people that's the biggest enemy to you. The corrupt oligarchs, the corrupt intel agencies, the corrupt people at the State Department, the billionaires you claim to hate. He's been your biggest ally against them. But you've spent so much time hating him that you actually said, and look, I said it today on Twitter. People were like, geez, do you think after this, if Bernie doesn't get the nomination, do you think his supporters will still vote Democrat? Yes! Yes, most of them will. And Bernie will get another lake house, and everything will be hunky-dory. That's how insane this is. So I'm imploring you, if you're a Bernie supporter, if you're a Tulsi supporter, if you're a Jill Stein supporter, you don't have to like Trump. You don't have to vote for Trump. But stop cheering for the corruption against him. We can at least come together and say we disagree on almost everything policy-wise, but we can agree that the average normal American's voice should matter, and we're tired of this corruption. That's why I have friends on all sides of the aisle. I really do. We could argue about socialism later. It's terrible, but your voice doesn't matter. How many times, for those of you that have watched my show a lot, how many times have I said, what is your issue? Is it the Second Amendment? Is it the First Amendment? Are you pro-life? Are you pro-choice? Is climate change your big issue? Is illegal immigration your big issue? Is kids in cages your big issue? I don't care if your issue is predominantly on the left or on the right. If there are corrupt people being kingmakers, deciding who wins our elections, using their authority as a shadow government to go after candidates or officials that they perceive as a threat to their power, then your vote doesn't matter. Your issue doesn't matter. Because even if you get 99% of the country to agree with you, if those corrupt people controlling the government don't agree with you, then your issue won't be solved. So we can at least come together to say the corruption needs to end. Now, on the offshot that you're one of these corrupt establishment type people, I don't like you. I hope that you're all removed and all of you are brought to justice that actually engaged in crimes. However, let me say, can't you see that the outrage mob that you've created, that the Bernie bros, the progressives, the Me Too culture, you thought it was cool when it was going after Republicans. You thought it was cool when it was going after Trump and his supporters. You thought it was cool when Kavanaugh was guilty until proven innocent. You were all for that. Hey, as long as it's directed at my enemy, totally cool with me. You were cool with that, right? Can we now agree, now that it's being targeted at you? Like, for those of you who don't know, check out the video of last weekend. The Nevada head of the DNC, a bunch of Bernie bros showed up to his house where his wife and kids are at as well at 3 a.m. with floodlights and bullhorns screaming at them. This is going to happen more and more. And trust me, it's going to be a mess. Yes, Bernie supporters, the majority of them will ultimately come around and support whoever wins the DNC nomination because Orange Man bad. They will. But at the convention, if Bernie gets screwed, which is looking likely, there's going to be violence. There's going to be extremist behavior. They have the right to be upset. They're getting cheated again. Now, it's karma. It is karma that they're being cheated because 99% of them cheered for the cheating against Trump. They cheered for the corruption against Trump. And so I have my integrity. I'll still defend them. I'll defend Bernie Sanders. Even though he liked the corruption when it was directed against Trump, I'm not going to sell out my personal integrity. Just like with Chris Matthews. You think I like Chris Matthews? No. He's one of the most ridiculous propagandist shills for the deep state that's been on the mainstream media for 20 years. But he's brought down by Me Too allegations. And just like with everyone else who faced Me Too allegations, I said, this is unfair, they're innocent until proven guilty, they should be allowed to defend themselves. Even Chris Matthews, even Al Franken. That's what I said. Now, did Chris Matthews give Kavanaugh that benefit of the doubt? Of course not. He's a hypocrite. I'm not going to sink to his level. So I understand the Bernie supporters have the right to be upset, but the Maxine Waters, don't leave Republicans, operate in public, chase them out of restaurants, follow them to their homes. As soon as those tactics are used on Maxine Waters herself or the other establishment Democrats, now they have a huge problem with it. So can we come together and say that these cancel culture outrage mobs, even you corrupt people on the establishment, can we come together and say that that's garbage? You see, I'm trying to get allies on both of these sides. But we'll see. Let's check out I'm going to check out Texas again and see how things are looking. For those of you who want to know, I'm just at the Hill. And it takes forever to load, but they got this map at the top of their website that leaves you click any state, and it'll tell you the percentage of the vote that's in. It shows you all the counties and who voted what way, and, whoopee! So Texas is the big one that I'm looking at. Again, my prediction was that basically looks like Joe Biden now has 24% of the vote, and Bernie's sitting still at about 28%, so it looks like Joe Biden gained a percentage on him. That's with 43% of the vote in. So yeah, that's what's going on there. So again, let's see. So I think that what you end up seeing is what I predicted was, I think that basically the way the polls were, there won't be any surprises really as far as someone winning a state that was not expected. But I do think Massachusetts might go Biden's way, and I think it was predicted to go Bernie's. But overall, I think mostly the polls will have right who was supposed to win each state. However, I think that Biden is outperforming in each of those states almost every time what was expected. And that's a bad side for Bernie. And Bernie really needed a concisive victory, because if he gets to a brokered convention, he doesn't have a chance. So I think at this point, depending on exactly what happens in California, if Bernie wins by a ridiculous landslide, more than even expected, I think that you wouldn't say this is a massive loss for Bernie, but certainly the person having the best night's Joe Biden, that he exceeded his expectations. And what that really goes to show then, the people that are really having the best night, even more than Biden, is the corporatist, it's the establishment, it's the mainstream media, because they've proven that on a whim, this is how powerful they are. They literally can change voters' minds this significantly in like a week's worth of time by saying, okay, here's who you have to go vote for. We're putting all of our weight behind this guy, Joe Biden. Now, I see Michael Tracy, I see people like Aaron Maté, who were Democrats or left-wing people that were against the Russia collusion hoax, and they're both big Tulsi and Bernie supporters. I see them out there saying, oh my God, can you believe how much of an impact that the media is having and, the DNC's having? Yeah, I can believe it. Now, imagine that was the case for 40 years against real conservatives, that the media was that biased against them. Now, every time it's directed against conservatives, these same people tell us, oh, it's not, who cares if the media is biased? It's not a big deal. Well, you see just how powerful they could be right here. And make no mistake about it. Everybody says Donald Trump has this locked up. He does not. And if you say that, you have the chance of being on the, how we see all those videos and laugh in 2016 of all the Hillary supporters, why, screaming. That could be you on the next video. If you're like, guaranteed Trump has it 99% locked up. Don't underestimate how powerful the narrative is and how corrupt the people controlling it are. Just today, I saw an actual blue checkmark journalist on Twitter suspended for 12 hours. Do you know why he was suspended? Because he quoted Joe Biden said, don't forget to get out there and vote on Super Thursday. Well, on Twitter, they've ruled that if you say that the election's occurring on a day that it's not actually occurring, that's voter suppression. So even quoting the leading candidate for the Democrat, quoting them, that could get you suspended on Twitter. That's the power that they have. You can't make fun of Joe Biden like that. No, no, no. Oh, knocking down water bottles. Robert 2020. Little late for that. Maybe Robert 2022. I'll run for president in 2028. I'll win Super Thursday. So, yeah, that's what we see going on. I have to say, it's just, for me, these things are stupid. It really doesn't matter. It's just anecdotally interesting, I guess, to watch what's happening at, like, a Democrat debate, or what's happening with something like this, Super Tuesday, but, really, does it matter? When it gets right down to it, I just feel like all the corruption's going to back whoever wins the primary. It's just an empty suit. Literally, the Democratic candidate could be a mannequin in a suit. It really could be. Look at Bloomberg. Bloomberg was getting good amounts of support. He's doing terrible tonight. But he went from basically 1% to being in the conversation, and at one point being considered the second. Okay? He went there and he didn't have one policy position. Not one. His position was just Orange Man bad. The Democrats aren't running on their policies. They're running on Donald Trump is a Nazi. Donald Trump caused the coronavirus. Donald Trump is a stooge of Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump is a rapist. Donald Trump is a racist. That's what they're running on. That's it. They don't need an actual candidate. Do you really think, you look at Joe Biden, you really think that guy's competent enough that he has his faculties to be president of the United States? Do you really think that? He's just an empty vessel. They're going to put him up there, stuff him up there, put little braces under his arms so he just stands there, and then leave him rant about how people that disagrees with him are horse face or, right? That's it. The guy, we're supposed to forget. Look at all the gas he had. Imagine, what did he say? You're a dog-faced pony soldier. That's what he called that woman. Imagine if Trump would have said something like that to a woman. We're supposed to just forget all these gaffes that Biden has. We're supposed to just forget. He can't even, look, part of running, and I know this, I ran. I explained this last night when I was running in the special election in 2019. I called the conferees all the time, and I had many of them say, I think you're wrong. I think you're terrible for this position. Okay, part of running for office is you have to say, I respect that, fair enough. I'd still appreciate your vote, but if someone else's policies align more with you, fair enough. I didn't lash out at them like Biden. People ask Biden stuff that's not even remotely hostile, and he just starts flipping out on them. He said the other day, he said, you happy with your tax cut? You making more money now? Guess what? If I'm elected, I'm taking that away. Like, who says that? And that's the best. That's who the Democrats are going to coalesce around. They don't care. It's irrelevant. It's the shadow government that's running the show. Don't believe me? Go back to the impeachment. Go back there. Do you notice how all these people from the State Department constantly were saying Trump went against our foreign policy? Did you see that? Everyone was talking about it. That's who runs the show. Not them, not Vindman, not Yovanovitch. It's not those two that are running the show. But it's unelected officials. It's the people that pay for them, the military-industrial complex, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA. That's who's running the show, the globalist, the wealthy people like the Soroses that are paying for them. That's what's going on. Joe Biden's just a vessel. So it's hard for me to get really fired up about, which puppet are they going to put up against Trump? I wonder who it'll be. They're going with the infirmed old man, as opposed to the hypocritical billionaire, or the hypocritical socialist. Whatever. And then we all have to act like the people that control the narrative, they act like Joe Biden's some dynamic person. Look, the most important thing in life, if you really need a simple lesson, it's this. Tell the truth. It just is. And once you start to get to the point where telling the truth is radical, or that there's a global conscious that we look at things that everybody knows is true, but you're afraid to say it. Like, here's one. On average, men are stronger than women. If you put women in sports that require strength, on average, men will beat them. You can't say that now. Or men are different than women. You can't say that now. We have to pretend that's not the case. We still have to pretend that if you're black or a woman and you're running for office, that's a disadvantage for you. When the truth is the exact opposite. Far more people will vote for you because you're a minority than will vote against you because you're a minority. Like, for example, take Barack Obama. How many people do you think voted against Obama because he was black? Probably not many. In other words, they were down with all of his policies, but they didn't like him because he was black. Not many, but I bet a lot voted for him because he was black. We see it today. Just today, I saw 3-4 people say, whoever's picked for vice president has to be a woman. Why? But then we have to pretend that being a woman's a detriment. That's a lie. We all know it's a lie. And then there's other, like, those are just the obvious things. But we have to pretend things like, oh, Joe Biden's this very shrewd political talent. He's not. He's a confused old man. But everybody shapes the narrative. I saw Rob Reiner tweeting today. I saw, George Stephanopoulos. James Carville. Oh, Joe Biden, he's our big, but John Brennan, James Comey, all the people involved in the FISA scandal. They all think Biden's a really competent, great guy. We have to pretend like these voices know more than us. Voices, it's like people running the stock market. I watched this study one time that said, if you took like basically a random number generator and had it pick stocks, it outperformed most brokers. I mean, that's insane. People whose job it is to pick stocks were beaten by random number generators. That's how I feel about political pundits. These people making predictions could be outperformed by regular people on the street who have nothing to do with politics. Just have them spin a wheel and they'd be able to come with a better prediction. But I gotta listen to the talking head class, the propagandist class. I have to pretend that Joe Biden's some relevant, intelligent person. He's not. And this crap happens all the time. And I'm here to tell you, I picture this, picture you're a doctor, right? Or you're a young person and you want to become a doctor. And so you go to med school and you get your first, what's the word? You get your first placement and you go out with all the doctors and they're like doing beer bongs and, they can't figure out how to change a tire. And you start to realize I had this idea that these were all these really impressive people. But really, it's just people that have developed a very specific skill, and they're just as average or as dumb as the regular person. Well, politics is like that. I thought I was going to get into it and see, wow, these people that have been doing it for years, they're really impressive. I mean, they thought that I was, had revolutionary ideas with incredible concepts like this. Hey, you shouldn't attack the voters that didn't vote for you, because don't you want them to vote for you next time? Well, what do you mean? For example, if I won, I would have talked to the Democrat voters and said, hey, I represent you as well. I'm going to stay truthful to what I said my platform would be, but I welcome your input as well. Wow, that's amazing. Or, hey, as Republicans, we should be reaching out to the African American community. I'm in Pennsylvania, so in Philly and in Pittsburgh, we should be reaching out to single women who tend to vote Democrat. We should be reaching out to young people. Yeah, but we won't get a lot of those votes. Yes, but you don't have to get the majority. You just have to get some of them. And if you show that you're authentic and you're actually willing to hear from them year after year, maybe we'll start to get more of those votes. Wow, that's incredible. That's just common sense. Anyone in this chat room could have came up with it. But that was mind-breaking stuff. Oh, my goodness. These people, you think leave the political stuff to the politicians. They're experts. No, they're not. Most of them aren't. I'll bet over 50% of us, me and those watching me right now, could do a better job given a month's worth of research than most of the people that we've elected to represent us. Guaranteed. We'd be more faithful to the Constitution. We'd actually care more about the average constituents, whether they be Republicans or Democrats. But we have to pretend, we have to buy into this lie that, it's the experts. We got to trust the experts. People like Joe Biden, people like Hillary Clinton. James Comey weighed in. That must matter. John Brennan weighed in for the same person. Wow. Those guys are career, intel agency people. They know what's going on. We have to forget how corrupt they are. We have to forget how they lied to the American people and lied to Congress. All right. So I got a treat for y'all. So I have a friend who I hadn't talked to for a long time. And I just want to preface this by saying I really like this person, and it's someone I think that would consider themselves a Democrat. And they sent me a list that they identified with. And apparently this list was circulated on Facebook by Ron Howard. Now, in fairness, this was sent to me February 16th, so I might be, I don't know how viral this went, and I don't know how recent it was that it was created when it was sent to me on February 16th. But what this is, and this is getting away, we'll check back more with Super Tuesday here. I promised that I would do something on this. And what it is a list of things that Ron Howard was saying that a bunch of Democrats were jumping on that was supposed to be a reasonable list of what it means to them to be a Democrat. And the intention behind this, I think, was kind of the idea of we're tired of being pigeonholed as we're extreme when really we're not. So I want to go through this list. I read the list once and I came up with thoughts real quick on the top of my head, and I haven't thought about it for 2 weeks. I just needed something to talk about tonight, so figured I'd go with it. So I'm going to give you my impressions. What I remember from this list is it starts off sounding more reasonable. It tries to give the tone of, oh, we're just these reasonable people. We're not extremists. We don't like people saying that we're divisive. That's not who we are, right? That's how it starts out. And then by the end of it, you'll see that it gets way crazier than that. So I'll start reading. I'm not going to put it up on the, because I'm doing a podcast, I won't bring it up, but I'll read it to you. So it says, it's copied from Ron Howard. It says, I'm a liberal, but that doesn't mean what a lot of you apparently think it does. Let's break it down, shall we? Because quite frankly, I'm getting a little tired of being told what I believe and what I stand for. Spoiler alert, not every liberal is the same, though the majority of liberals I know think along roughly these same lines. Well, of course, not everyone's the same, but then it's funny to say we're not all the same, but we basically all think all of this. So right out of the gate, a little humor. So let's just go. Again, I haven't pre-planned my answers to this. We'll just go off the cuff. Number one, I believe in a country that should take care of its weakest members. A country cannot call itself civilized when its children, disabled, sick, and elderly are neglected, period. That's number one. Okay, well, here's a problem with this, right? The problem with this is there will never be a country without, quote, neglected, poor, weak, young. It's inevitable. It will happen. No matter what you do, you could declare yourself king of the world and be the most big-hearted, awesome person ever and say, I have the perfect plan to make sure no one suffers, and people would still suffer, and people would be lost in the crack. So right out of the gate, by definition, this would mean that no country ever could call itself a civilized country, period, as they say. Secondly, no one's debating. Most people agree on what they want to see. See, by the same token, I could say to Ron Howard here, well, you say that conservatives don't care about the poor, and that's not true at all. We just have a difference of an opinion on how to best help the poor or how to best alleviate poverty. I'm a realist. I understand there will always be poverty, no matter what we do, as I said previously. So I think that limited government, limited intervention, and things like that actually have a chance to alleviate poverty more than any other system. Look at Milton Friedman. He talked about this all the time. There has been every society in the world where the impoverished, where the people at the lowest of that specific society have the greatest quality of life, every one of them engage in a free market system. Every single one. That's capitalism. That's good. Now, does that mean we shouldn't have any social safety net? No, I'm not saying that. But we see that oftentimes when we try to encourage social safety nets, almost every single time it has the exact opposite effect. For example, massive public housing. That was to alleviate poor in inner cities. What did it do? It ended up leading to all sorts of poverty increasing. It led to things like crime increasing. It led to the ghettoization of poor people. It immediately backfired. Rent control, the exact same thing. It increases poverty everywhere we see it. The war on poverty policies. Many of the things that the war on poverty policies way back in the 60s was seeking to combat, in particular what they called a national crisis, which the Moynihan report said was that 25% of black children were born in single-parent households out of wedlock. Moynihan, a Democrat in 62, I believe, called that a national disgrace. Now the number's 75%. So 50 years of the policies designed to combat that, and it's 3 times worse. So that's all well and good. You could say, I'm a liberal and that means caring about the poor. That's fine. So do I. I think your policies have made it worse. Number 2, I believe healthcare is a right, not a privilege. Somehow this is interpreted as, I believe Obamacare is the end-all be-all. That is not the case. I'm fully aware that the ACA has problems, that a national healthcare system would require everyone to chip in, and that it's impossible to create one that is devoid of flaws. But I've yet to hear an argument against it that makes let people die because they can't afford healthcare a better alternative. I believe healthcare should be far cheaper than it is, and that everyone should have access to it. And no, I'm not opposed to paying higher taxes in the name of making it happen. Okay, but again here, we see that they couch the argument in terms of moralism. Now, Ron Howard, who's supposedly the person who wrote this, or at least sharing it, is wealthy beyond any means that I'll ever have. I could live comfortably off less than $50,000 a year. Can Ron Howard do the same? Then why not give his excess wealth to the people I know that need health care? He's willing to chip in a little more. Sure, I'm sure he is willing to chip in. When you're a millionaire, chipping in a few more bucks on your taxes isn't a big deal. But when you're someone like me, it is. And he talks about how healthcare is a right. That's absurd. If he believed healthcare was a right, then he would be out there giving people that right. It would be the same as if you saw someone who didn't have access to water and you were ridiculously wealthy and you saw them every day, you would get them some water. You would use some of your own wealth because it's a right for them to have water. But somehow Ron Howard doesn't feel the necessity to do that with healthcare. Now, I'm not saying there aren't significant problems with this healthcare. But again, Ron Howard accuses us of pigeonholing him of saying, oh, you think that Obamacare was the end-all be-all. I didn't say that. I didn't say that's what Democrats thought. But on the other hand, Ron Howard pigeonholes all of us that aren't liberal like him as, well, if you can't afford healthcare, then you should die. That's not what people say. People are realists and say that it's impossible, as he admits, to come up with a system without flaws. So we need to have a system that does the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Now, I know plenty of people without healthcare, many of which in my family, or at least at one point in my family. They didn't have healthcare, but they had several big screen TVs, they had computers, they had PlayStations, they had Xbox, they had tickets to sporting events, they went on vacation. Now, if healthcare was a human right, picture yourself this. If you can't eat, if you literally are starving to death, would you buy a PlayStation? Would you buy a new computer? Yet if you don't have healthcare, many people do choose to buy new computers. Many people do choose to buy a fancy car or to go on vacation. So clearly there's something different about the right of not starving to death, the right of having clean water, because if you don't have that stuff, you're going to use all of your means to get it. Whereas healthcare, people make the conscious decision not to get it. So at what point do we say it becomes immoral when we look at people that have purposely, they knew the side of, like, just take something like smoking. If someone starts smoking right now, today, with everything we know, and they decide they're 35 years old like me, I'm going to start smoking. Should you be on the hook then? Should you have to pay my medical bills? I made a conscious decision. I knew the risks. But you should have to pay for it. And if that bankrupts our society, so be it. Now notice that Ron Howard says it's a right for everyone, right? So that would also mean he's also going to go on to talk about how we need to help the poor in other countries. So is it a right for them as well? At what point do we understand that there's a problem of scarcity? That's what no one wants to talk about with Medicare for All. There's only so much health care to go around. We don't have enough doctors. The number one way to create more people in the medical field is to allow a free market system that allows them to get paid more. Do we have a perfect system now? Of course not. There's all sorts of changes I'd like to see happen. For example, I think getting insurance out of the game altogether is a better option. Allowing free market, allowing competition across state lines and things like that. It's all better choices. But if the money went directly into the pockets of the doctors and the nurses and the healthcare professionals instead of enriching these insurance companies, that would be a better thing. But that would mean people have to have personal responsibility to actually save money to be able to take care of their healthcare needs. So we need some system that's delayed. The people we've already promised healthcare, we need to continue to allow them to have it, but we need to be realistic and say that people need to make their own personal choices. And that doesn't mean if someone makes a bad choice, I want them to die. But what's the alternative? You want people that didn't make bad choices to have to live in crippling poverty because we have to pay for the world's healthcare needs? Because what, if healthcare's a right, then why wouldn't it be a right for the people of Mexico? Why wouldn't it be a right for the people in Africa? So I guess we have to pony up for them. And I'm sure the liberals like Ron Howard basically believe in open borders, which I think we'll get to later. So, hey, if they come here and need healthcare, who are we? It would be immoral. It's their right to come here and get the healthcare, right? Who cares if there's not enough to go around? Who cares if we can't afford it? But I'll bet you Ron Howard's not suffering. I bet if he needs to get to a doctor, he will, even if he has to get in a private jet and go somewhere to see one. I don't mind. There are problems with healthcare, and I'm not pretending that I have all the answers. But I'm sick and tired of this moral argument that people make. If it's a moral issue, then stop living rich and give your excess money to people that need healthcare. Otherwise, you're not more moral than anyone else. You saying, oh, I'm such a great person because I'm willing to chip in a little more, as long as everyone else chips in a little more. Following something, doing something because you're compelled by government force doesn't make you moral. Doing something of your own free will that's a good decision that makes you a good person, that's a moral decision. Not because the government tells you you have to. Number 3. I believe education should be affordable. It doesn't necessarily have to be free, though it works in other countries, so I'm mystified as why it can't work in the U.S. Ugh. But at the end of the day, there's no excuse for students graduating college saddled with 5-6-figure debt. Yeah, okay, sure. First off, yeah, it works in other countries where they're taxed at 50-60%. I don't care. I think that's a terrible idea, but at least be honest. And also be honest about the fact that these countries are far smaller. See, socialism could work in a smaller society. It's more controlled, in a more of a homogenous society, where everyone does similar amounts of work. Everyone has a similar national identity. They're all kind of reaching for the same goal. Then sharing the wealth like that tends to work better. In a country as diverse as the United States, where we have somewhere between 11 and 27 million illegal immigrants, we don't know, by a factor of 17 million, how many illegal immigrants are in this country. Saying, well, everyone should have free healthcare and everyone should have free college. It doesn't work. Not to mention, we already have free public schooling up until grade 12. Where does it say that it's necessary to have beyond there? And if we give free schooling to everyone, all that will make a 4-year bachelor degree the exact same as a high school degree now. So the way the high school degree works is if you get a high school degree, it doesn't separate you. The only impediment is the only effect is if you don't get a degree, it separates you as poorer than the average person that gets a high school degree. But getting a high school degree, it's not like, very impressive, Mr. Rob, you have a high school degree. No one says that. So now the new system will just be, very impressive, Mr. Rob, you have an undergraduate degree. No one will say that. It'll just be the new high school. Now it's like grade 16. You graduate grade 12, go to grade 13. That's all it'll be. Then if you want to separate yourself, you'll have to continue to pay to go to graduate school. If we give out free graduate school, it'll be the same thing with doctoral school. Now, the same problem here is the same thing we saw with the insurance industry and Obamacare. So what Obama and Michael Moore and all these people told us was, look at how shady the insurance companies are. Oh, they're so terrible. Horrible companies. And so Obama said, I know what we'll do. These corrupt insurance companies, we're going to fix them. You ready? We'll make it illegal for you. We'll tax you if you don't buy their product. Ha ha ha! We showed those insurance companies. That'll be sure to drive down costs. Are you kidding? At least with the insurance companies, they were willing to say that they were corrupt. But none of these so-called liberals are willing to call a spade. These students are being saddled with debt. Who's the debt to? Who's charging them these exorbitant prices for a product that's worth diddly squat? Well, it's the universities. But wait a minute. I thought the liberals told us the universities are the great, noble places ran by really special, awesome liberal people. You mean to tell me these awesome liberals running these universities are really just putting kids into indentured servitude, putting them 6 figures in debt for a degree that's absolutely worthless 90% of the time? But instead, like I was saying, we have to pretend these universities are great places. They're ran by great, caring people. They're not just people getting wealthy off the labor of young people. That's not what they are. No, they're great. So what's the liberal plan? We need to make sure that the government's paying these universities. So give those corrupt people more money? So that kids can waste more of their time to get more worthless degrees? What sense does that make? Meanwhile, you can get actual cheaper education that actually matters by all sorts of things, like going to a job, becoming an apprentice somewhere, starting at a lower wage and learning a skill that's actually useful, working with your hands, things that we are in desperate need of labor for. Not your African American studies degree or your women's dance degree. You pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for that? Hey, I'm no different. I got a speech comm degree, a master's degree in speech comm. You know what I'm using it for? Nothing. So I'm tens of thousands of dollars in debt. Should you have to pay that for my poor decisions? Because I decided in my undergraduate years to get hammered every other night? Is that on you? It shouldn't be. It's on me. Now notice how all this stuff seems, right? It's easy to look, oh, I'm a caring person. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You think that Stalin, the people that were cheered for Stalin, I'm not saying, by the way, this person's like Stalin, but I'm just saying, there are very few people, even the most insane dictators that we see, that said, I'm an evil person. Most of these people that wanted massive government overhaul and control of programs thought they were doing the best thing for poor people or for their country. The problem was, once it turned out it was a disaster, they needed to do more and more crazy stuff to maintain power. Number 4, I don't believe your money should be taken from you and given to people who don't want to work. I've literally never encountered anyone who believes this. That's a lie. It was in the Green New Deal. It said we'll guarantee income to even people that don't want to work. Andrew Yang said that. Guaranteed universal income, $1,000 to even people that don't want to work. So either Ron Howard doesn't get out much or he's lying here. Anyways, continued. I just have a massive moral problem with a society where a handful of people can possess the majority of the wealth, while there are people that are literally starving to death, freezing to death, or dying because they can't afford to go to the doctor. Fair wages, lower housing costs, universal health care, affordable education, and the wealthy actually paying their share would go a long way towards alleviating this. Somehow believing this makes me a communist. No, believing that makes you a hypocrite. Ron Howard, you're rich. When you say, I have a massive moral problem with the society where a handful of people can possess the majority of wealth, while there are people, etc. You're one of those people that possess the majority of wealth. So you are literally in a unique position to put your money where your mouth is. But you won't do it. You won't vote for a system where you make the same amount of money as me. You won't. You'll vote for a system that takes a little from you, but you can still be a wealthy elite as long as it takes from other people. Again, that doesn't make you moral. And yes, we all think that it's terrible that there are people starving, but we have different ways to solve it. Some of us are more realistic and don't engage in utopia. I know that there will always be people starving to death. I know that there will always be people freezing to death. I'm trying to come up with a system that I think makes those things the least likely. One of the things your system does is says, we have to help every single person that comes to the United States. That means when you talk about people literally starving to death, freezing to death, dying because they can't afford to go to the doctor, we could be taking care of those Americans. Like, here's a group I care about, veterans that can't get health care. It is, it's a tragedy. It's disgraceful to this country. The homeless crisis, disgraceful, agreed. Yet instead of actually focusing on the actual people of this country, it seems like the people in the party that Ron Howard support, the Democratic Party, are more concerned about the poor around the world. They want to bring in cheap labor in the form of illegal immigration. They say we should have to take care of those people. They don't care about the poor veterans, or they'd say, let's solve our people first, and then, once those problems are taken care of, we're worried about the rest of the world. So it's all in the eye of the beholder. You say, oh, I just want everyone to live in total utopia and peace and harmony, and for some reason that makes me a communist. No, the problem is the policies that you're advocating makes the situation worse. And for you to apply that, oh, somehow you just want, all of these things to be taken care of, and therefore I must not, if I'm not a liberal, is ridiculous. Of course I don't want people freezing to death. I just think I have a better way to deal with it. I don't approach liberals and say, oh, you want people to freeze to death. That's what the liberals do to me. I say we have a disagreement on how to help the poor. You say I don't care about the poor. Now look, go read, what's his name? Jonathan Haidt from Heterodox Academy. So he's this guy, Heterodox Academy is this organization of people in universities. Understand, Jonathan Haidt's a liberal guy, but he started to notice the rapid escalation of far left activism on college campuses. Not just with students, but also with faculty, also with administration, right? One of the things he talks about in one of his speeches, he gives out this survey. He asks people to be truthful of whether they're independent, Republican, Democrat, left-wing, right-wing, or in the middle, right? And so they list what they are. And then he gives them this sort of test. though it doesn't really have right answers. It's more of like a survey, I guess. And it gives you these hypothetical situations. So it'll say something like, you're walking down the street and you see a homeless person asking for change. What do you do? And there's like 6 possible answers. And one's just like callously walk over them and tell them to get a job. One's like try to help them get cleaned up and feed them food. One's give them a bunch of money. One's try to help them work on a resume. One's talk to your city council and see if they, you see what I mean? There's all sorts of options. So the Republicans answered and the Democrats answered, but that wasn't really the quiz. That wasn't what he was interested in. Then he re-hands out the quiz to everyone and says, okay, you already said if you're Republican or Democrat or somewhere in between. Now what I want you to do is fill out this exact same questionnaire as if you're the opposite. So if you're a Democrat, fill it out as if you would assume a Republican would fill it out. If you're a Republican, fill it out as if you would assume how the Democrats would fill it out. And each time he gives this quiz, the people that identify as a Republican are very, very good at correctly answering how the Democrats voted. But the people that are Democrats almost always pick the most evil option for how they say the Republicans would vote. So a Republican would say, well, I think the Democrat would give them money and try to take them and give them food and talk to their city council. That's how a Democrat would answer. The Democrat will answer, I think the Republican would spit on the homeless person and tell them to get a job. In other words, Republicans think that Democrats are wrong, and Democrats think Republicans are evil. Now, that's not true. That's just in general. I'm not saying that about all my specific Democrat friends that are here watching. I'm not. But on average, that's what it shows. And you can see it in what Ron Howard's saying here. Oh, I just care about the poor. That makes me a communist. Unlike you. What are you talking about? As if Republicans or conservatives or libertarians or independents or Green Party or whatever don't care about the poor. Of course, most humane people care about the poor. The question is, every policy has pros and cons. Just saying, well, give the poor everything they want then. If I come at, and that's one of the things you could often do. Let's say I come at Ron Howard, instead of from the conservative position, I'll just come at him for the more left position. Oh, Ron Howard, you're not willing to give your house up to that poor person? You're a monster. You don't care about poor people. He'd say, wait a minute, that's ridiculous. Of course I care. But I'm not willing to give that much. Okay. That's where the conservatives are at. We just have a different solution. I'm sick and tired of people bringing morality into it. As if Republicans don't care about poor people or about people needing health care. Of course we do. We're saying that your positions, things like socialism, are an abject disaster. Number 5, more in this vein. I don't throw around, I'm willing to pay higher taxes lightly. If I'm suggesting something that involves paying more, well, it's because I'm fine with paying my share as long as it's actually going to something besides lining corporate pockets or bombing other countries while Americans die without health care. Okay, number 1, more taxes will go to lining corporations' pockets and will go to warfare and other things like that. Number 2, you know what's a good way to ensure, if you're willing to pay more, but you don't want it going to a government that gives it to corrupt people, you know what's a good way to ensure that doesn't happen? This is going to blow your mind, Ron Howard, and all the people that believe this. You ready for this? Give the money to the people you want to have it yourself. Isn't that mind-blowing? Wait a minute. You mean if you're willing to help the poor, but you don't want the government to waste your money, you could just give the poor money without making the government force you to give it to them? Oh, isn't that amazing? It's almost like Ron Howard's being disingenuous here, isn't it? If you're willing to pay more, do it. Who's stopping you? Who's stopping you, Ron Howard? 1, you could legitimately pay whatever you want in taxes right now. You're not saying it lightly, right? You're fine with paying your share? You don't think you're paying your share? That's what you're saying? I watch Judge Judy all the time. I love Judge Judy. This is what this argument reminds me of. Judge Judy nails guys on this all the time. She'll say, you have a kid with this lady? Yeah. Are you paying child support? And they'll say, no, we haven't had our hearing yet. And Judge Judy will say, so? So you haven't had the hearing. You don't think the child needs support? You're only willing to pay when the court tells you you have to? That's what I would say to Ron Howard right here. Okay, if you recognize you're not paying your fair share and you think you should be paying more, do it. Who's stopping you? So you're either the dumbest person alive, oh, I didn't realize I could just give money to poor people, or you're a liar. You remember what I was saying earlier about George Orwell saying he had this sneaking suspicion that a lot of these socialists, it wasn't that they liked the poor, it's that they hated people that had more than them. That's what it sounds like Ron Howard's saying here, isn't it? Oh, I'll pay my share. If that guy does, he has to pay more. Otherwise, I can't pay more. I know I'm not paying enough, but what can I do? I mean, pay it on my own without the government forcing me? Oh, I can't do that. Who's stopping you, Ron Howard? If you actually cared about the poor, that's what you'd be doing. I mean, he admits, I'm not paying my fair share. I'm willing to pay my fair share, but only if the government forces me. I mean, how ridiculous is this? Oh, I realize the fact that I'm a bank robber, it's a bad thing, and I'm willing to stop robbing banks, but only if it's illegal to rob banks. And this guy's the guy that's talking to us about morality. And again, why am I pointing this out? This was being shared by tons of liberals. This is what they believe, they say. Drink of water. A little pause here for you on the podcast. Number 6. I believe companies should be required to pay their employees a decent, livable wage. Somehow this is always interpreted as me as wanting to flip burgers to be able to afford a penthouse apartment and a Mercedes. No one says that. What it actually means is that no one should have to work 3 full-time jobs to keep their head above water. Restaurant servers should not have to rely on tips. Multi-billion-dollar companies should not have employees on food stamps. Workers should not have to work themselves into the ground just to barely make ends meet. And minimum wage should be enough for someone to work 40 hours and live. Okay, let me reverse the question to you. I live in rural Pennsylvania. Now, they want to raise minimum wage to $15 to $20 an hour. I, for the first time in my life since January, have made more than $15 an hour right now. I make about $15.40 an hour right now. Okay? There are mom and pop shops around here. Fish sporting equipment shops. There's mom and pop, like little general store type, grocer type places. Mom and pop, like carpenter stores. All sorts of things like that. They still exist. I think these things are the backbone of what made our country great. Small businesses. If you force the small businesses in my area to pay $15 minimum wage to people, they would be out of business at the end of the month. Is Ron Howard okay with that? Is he a callous animal that doesn't care? So why is it acceptable to say, oh, you're somehow immoral if you don't think that there should be a decent minimum wage? Now, we could go back to Milton Friedman and talk about how the minimum wage actually harms the very people that it claims to help. For example, if you pass minimum wage here, we have a general store in my mother-in-law's town, and then we have a Dollar General right beside it. They both sell similar small grocery items, things like that. If you raised minimum wage to $15 an hour, Dollar General would survive. They'd lay off people. They would run the store with less people. They'd raise their prices. The mom and pop shop would close down. Now there's no competition for Dollar General, and they can charge what they want because they're the only game in town. Does that sound like the progressive utopia that Ron Howard's discussing here? Well, he doesn't engage in facts. He doesn't look at reality. $15 an hour in rural Pennsylvania is far different than $15 an hour in Seattle because the costs of living are so much different. So it's hard to have some sort of universal minimum wage. And then if we go back to Milton Friedman, we could talk about how minimum wage actually is detrimental to the very groups, the demographics that the liberals claim to want to help the most. So picture this. You should not be told that it's illegal for you to sell your labor for a certain price. That is an anti-liberty position. If you're willing to work for $3 an hour, you should be allowed to do so. What happened was you had generation after generation of Jim Crow laws and things like that, for example, in the black community. So there was lack of an access to education and stuff, and these were real problems. One of the ways that black people could work and compete in the market was they could sell their labor at a lower rate than white people. So if you were a racist business owner, or you were someone that said, well, I think in general black people are less educated, you would say, well, if I could pay the black guy $1 less an hour, that's what I'll do. Then what happened was the black guy gets on-the-job training. He was willing to sell his labor a little cheaper. Now he gets educated at his job. And he eventually works himself up because he proves the value of his labor is worth just as much, if not more, than the people he was competing against that would have had to been hired at a minimum wage. If you have a minimum wage, then the business owner says, okay, I no longer have the option of hiring this person that's less educated at a lower rate because there's a minimum wage, so I'm just going to take the more educated person. Therefore, the people that are less educated, whether it be in the past, we were talking about black people, or just today, people that come from more impoverished community or had worse off education, now they're not able to compete in that marketplace and they never get the job. Do you see how that works? Now, everywhere where they've raised minimum wage in places like Seattle, Portland, other places like that, massively has caused places like fast food workers jobs. They cut back on hours, they started to implement kind of touchscreen technology that took away a lot of jobs, etc. Minimum wage is an abject disaster. Every single time they try to raise it significantly, there are all sorts of unforeseen problems. My job, right? What was my incentive to not, if they raise minimum wage to 15 or 20 bucks an hour, as some people are saying, what's my incentive not to just get some mindless job where I could just punch in and punch out like at a fast food place or at a gas station if I'm getting paid the exact same amount? But people don't think about that. Look, here's the truth. It's a sad, hard world. If you had a bunch of kids and you're a single dad or a single mom and you think you're going to raise those kids off a job at a fast food place, you're mistaken. That's not how society's set up. And to claim otherwise and to say, oh, no, the free market shouldn't get allowed to decide. Fast food must make enough to raise a family of two. Then you screw up the entire system. That's not being cold. That's not being callous. That's reality. Again, go back. Watch the promo for my channel. What is it? Why do I say that the United States was the greatest country in the history of the world? Two things: personal freedom and personal responsibility. Life's hard. It's easy to blame others. But you probably made bad choices if you're in that situation. Now, does that mean you should be thrown to the wolves? No. And I'll tell you right now, one of the most watched videos in the history of my channel was my first year doing this channel. And I was bashing Fox News because they did a story about a guy who he was one of the teenagers on The Cosby Show. And he was bagging groceries at Trader Joe's. And the story was like, oh, look at him. He looks old and chubby and has gray hair, and he went from being an actor to working at Trader Joe's. And I said, how dare they? At least the man's working. He saw a need. He had a family. He needed to provide. He took the job that he could right there to get money. That's excellent. You will never hear me bash someone that works fast food. I did it. I know people that do it. It's so easy in today's world to just sit in your butt and claim some kind of disability or get some kind of welfare check. If you're actually out there working, I applaud you. But that doesn't mean I'm going to pretend you should be making the wages of a doctor. It's possible to respect people that work no matter what their job is and not have to pretend, oh, that job's worth 20 bucks an hour. Number 7. I am not anti-Christian. I have no desire to stop Christians from being Christians, to close churches, to ban the Bible, to forbid prayer in school, etc. By the way, prayer in school is not illegal. Compulsory prayer in school is and should be illegal. All that I ask is Christians recognize my right to live according to my beliefs. When I get pissed off that a politician is trying to legislate scripture into law, I'm not offended by Christianity. I'm offended that you're trying to force me to live by your religion's rules. You know how you get really upset at the thought of Muslims imposing Sharia law? That's how I feel about Christians trying to impose biblical law on me. Be a Christian, do your thing, don't force it on me. Isn't it ironic how he says this? He doesn't mention Islam. He's not offended by Islam doing this. He says, oh, you're offended by Islam? Well, I'm offended by Christianity in the same way. That's one of the reasons that you can't take any of these people seriously. And you know, in their heart, they're engaged in this cultural Marxism where they say, oh, it's okay to bash Christians because they're the oppressor, but I can't bash Islam, which is worse. In every way I say I hate Christianity, Islam's worse, but I can't bash it because it's oppressed. You can see it right here in this comment. Imagine if he wrote, I'm not anti-Muslim. I have no desire to stop Muslims from being Muslims, to close mosques, to ban the Quran, or to forbid Muslim prayer in schools, etc. Imagine had he said that. He would never say that because he's a cultural Marxist, and he would consider that bashing Islam. Now, I don't disagree with him that, sometimes there should be a separation of church and state, but it's massively overblown. Being pro-life isn't only for Christian reasons. Now, I'm on board, as I said last night, with the idea of gay marriage. But I don't know what point he's trying to make here. It's clear by his very wording that he looks at Christianity like it's able to be criticized more so than things like Islam. And that's what I think most Christians have a problem with. We have to treat Islam with kid gloves. You can bash Jesus all you want, but don't draw a picture of Muhammad. We have to pretend like it's not a known fact. Again, another one of these things, denying reality. There's only one religion you're afraid to make fun of publicly. There's only one religion you have to be fearful that you'll get shot up if you make fun of publicly. We all know that. Now, I've defended specific Muslims many times on this show. I've said that if you could be a Muslim and a great person, I've done that. So don't accuse me of just bashing all of Islam. But there is a problem. Is there not? Or are we going to deny the fact that we see Islamic grooming gangs in the UK? By the way, I have an update on that coming up. Or are we going to deny that there's only one religion you can't mock in public? You can have the piss Christ, right? Peeing on Jesus. That's a work of art. Could you do that with Muhammad? Could you have that on campuses or in art museums and galas? I don't think so. So please spare me your, I'm not anti-Christian, but blah, 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 blah. Once you go after Islam with the same zeal you go after Christianity, maybe I'll take your word for it. Number 8, I don't believe LGBT people should have more rights than you. I believe they should have the same rights as you. Okay, if that's what he truly believes, fine, I agree. I'm pro-gay marriage, so whatever. But I think oftentimes we see that they're pushing things like transsexuals in schools. They're pushing things like sexuality in schools, things like that. That is absurd. But in general, fine, whatever. Bigger fish to fry here. 9, I don't believe illegal immigrants should come to America and have their world at their feet, especially since this isn't what they do. Spoiler, undocumented... Oh my God. Ugh. Spoiler, undocumented immigrants are ineligible for all those programs they're supposed to be abusing. And if they're stealing your job, it's because your employer is hiring illegally. Yeah, I have a problem with employers that hire illegally. I think that's something Trump should do more, go after them. But yes, they get access to all sorts of benefits. Didn't you just say healthcare is a human right up above? Can't they walk into the emergency room? Aren't you proposing a system where we pay for their healthcare? Aren't you saying education's a human right? So wouldn't they qualify for these programs? They are a drain on the country. We know it. If they're not, Mr. Ron Howard, please open your home and your gated community and allow tons of illegals in. I constantly hear these, illegals are such a great thing. They enrich your community. They don't abuse the system. They make every community more profitable and they're great. Great! Then put them in your towns. Take them to Martha's Vineyard. We don't want them there. But why? Us normal Americans are tired of reaping all the benefits of illegal immigrants. We'd like to share them with you wealthy elites. Why don't you take them on? It's almost like they don't believe their own rhetoric, isn't it? He continues, I believe there are far more humane ways to handle undocumented immigration than our current practice, i.e. detaining children, splitting up families, ending DACA, etc. That's funny, Ron Howard. I don't recall you saying a peep when the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals under Obama, the most liberal district of courts, under Obama were the ones that mandated separating kids from family at the border. I don't recall you saying a word then. Almost like you only bring this up to politicize it to go after Trump. So then what's your solution, Ron Howard? Should we not detain anyone at the border? If you come with a child, we have to let you in? Or should we detain the children with the parents? Because the court ruled that was inhumane. It said you can't put kids in holding cells with adults. They'll get molested or other things. There could be criminals amongst those adults. So you have to have a facility just for the children. So you're saying we should cage the children with adults? That's what you're suggesting, Ron Howard? And that's the real ugly truth with what's going on here. Look, you say what you will about me. You might disagree with a lot of my policy positions. And I say things on here, I know it would be easy for me to grow my channel, to just be like, rah, rah, Trump, Trump's always the best, conservative message, blah, blah, blah. But I don't. I go against him sometimes. I talk about my honest feelings. You might think I'm dumb. You might think I'm wrong. You might hate me for it. But at least I hope I come across as authentic. I talk an awful lot on here. There's hours upon hours of stuff to point out if I'm being inauthentic. I don't think I am. One of the things I can't stand about people that claim to be progressive or liberal or insert, the labels are tough. I'm not saying everyone who calls themselves that, but that comes from people of this group is they can't just tell the truth. Like the Bernie people, you're socialist. or communist. Don't lie about it. Don't say, no, I'm not a socialist. I'm a democratic socialist. No, I'm not for open borders. I just think it shouldn't be a crime to come here illegally and we shouldn't detain anyone. I mean, get out of here. I'm not for reparations, but I believe the Green New Deal should allow a racial redistribution of wealth. I want to get rid of some guns. Are you trying to get rid of handguns? No. Just the guns, that are really dangerous. Okay, so like handguns? No. Just the guns that kill the majority of people in the country here. You mean handguns? No. I'm just talking about guns that have, clips larger than 6. You mean handguns? No. I'm just talking about guns that are like semi-automatic. One pull, one shot. You mean like handguns? No. Just be honest. Yeah, I want handguns gun too. I'd have more respect for you. Yeah, I'm a socialist. Yeah, I'm a communist. Yeah, I basically want open borders. Just say it. Stop lying. What the Ninth Circuit Court did, the idea behind it was this. They're trying to set up a system using the courts where they say, we've set up this system that says you have to do X, Y, and Z legally, but X, Y, and Z is repugnant. So we just have to have open borders. We just shouldn't stop anyone at the border. I mean, it's inhumane to detain children, so if anyone comes with a kid, they should just get free ride right into the country. And that's what they want. They want open borders. But they have to say, we don't want open borders, but we can't separate children from their families, and we can't put children in cells with their families, so I guess, unfortunately, we have to have open borders. Shut up and stop lying. Just say what you mean. You want open borders. Now, is it possible that the facilities could be better for the kids? That we could expedite the process and put more resources into expediting the process of happily sending these people back to where they came from with their children? Sure. But I can't believe it because the propaganda is so thick that they constantly show me pictures of children in terrible cages and positions and how unethical, and it proves Trump's a racist. There are actually pictures from the Obama administration when Ron Howard and the rest of these liberals were silent. So I don't even believe their propaganda about how terrible these positions are. Until I see it for myself, sorry, I don't believe them. Now you might say, well, that sucked. Hey, they're the ones who cried wolf over and over. DACA, I agree, DACA's difficult. It wasn't the kids' fault that came here. My solution on DACA would be something like this. We will not give you a path to citizenship unless you achieve something very special, like you serve in the military for X number of years. However, you will be granted the right to stay here, and all of your family that brought you here is promptly sent back immediately. And I mean your mothers, your fathers, your grandparents, etc. The fact that they came here, then had a kid and said, now we morally have to stay. Sorry, one-way ticket out. But yes, the kids that did nothing wrong could stay. If they do something extraordinary, like an extraordinary public service or extraordinary military service, then we'll consider path to citizenship. If you break the law or something, then you're promptly deported. But yeah, I don't think we should just send all the DACA people back. Their parents, I don't care about. I'm tired of this anchor baby garbage. It's all about demographic change. It's all about trying to take, and I don't care about the race of it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about taking people from countries that don't understand the ideals of our country, that don't love the United States. And then they want to bring the same ideology and politics that made their countries terrible to our country. I don't care what their skin color is. I don't care if they're from Mexico, if they're from Sweden, if they're from Honduras, if they're from Germany, if they're from England. I don't care. I don't like illegal immigration. And the reason that the people on the left are supporting it is because they want demographic change and they want these votes. And the reason that so many Mitt Romney types of the world support it is they want cheap labor. And if they say I'm a racist for pointing out that obvious fact, I don't care. It's another charge that I don't care of. I'm unapologetic in my stance because I know in my heart I'm not a racist. So I'm not even going to entertain their argument. Number 10. I don't believe the government should regulate everything, but since greed is such a driving force in our country, we need regulations to prevent cut corners, environmental destruction, tainted food, water, unsafe materials and consumable goods or medical equipment, etc. It's not that I want the government's hands in everything. I just don't trust people trying to make money to ensure their products' practices are actually safe. Is of the government devoid of shadiness? Of course not. But with those regulations in place, consumers have recourse if they're harmed, and companies are liable for medical bills, environmental cleanup, etc. Just kind of seems like common sense when the alternative to government regulation is letting companies bring their bottom line into the equation. Of course, there should be some regulation. The problem is when we allow the government to have over-expansive regulation, it allows the government to pick winners and losers. So, for example, the things he's talking about here is wanting safe products. One of the worst companies in the world for this is Monsanto. Well, Monsanto heavily lobbies the government that sets these regulations. Therefore, Monsanto is able to get away with breaking the regulations, and the regulations preside an undue burden on small farmers. So let me give you an example. I'll make it as simple as possible. Let's say you have two farms. One's a large factory farm and that has thousands of employees. The other's a small family farm that's owned by a mom, a dad, and two children. So 4 people running it. Now, there's this much paperwork worth of regulations you have to fill out a month, we'll say. Like 5,000 pages. Got to fill these out a month. The factory farm that has thousands of employees could afford to hire a lawyer or an accountant or something, and their job is to fill out that paperwork and make sure the regulations are met. The farm being ran by farm people has to fill out the exact same amount of forms. How are they going to do it? They're pressed thin just operating the farm. So how is it they're going to find time to comply with all these regulations? Therefore, predictably, the more regulations you have, guess what the net result is? More small farmers going out of business, selling out to the factory farms, which then do more polluting and all the very things you were trying to solve in the first place by these regulations. They could afford to just break the regulations and pay the fine and be perfectly fine. Because they have these government officials, many of them so-called liberals, that they're paying off. Now, this was all caused not just because the corporation Monsanto was corrupt, or the factory farm was corrupt, but because their corruption enabled them, because of the massive size of the government, to use that government to enable their corruption. Now, he talks about greed being in this country. I saw Milton Friedman on Phil Donahue. Friedman's great, by the way. He was on Donahue, and I was watching this old clip of him. And Donahue says, but isn't there something with just the way greed is, with all these greedy people in these companies, that you don't think that, we don't need the government to step in? And Milton Friedman says, name me a society without greed. What does that society look like? Why should we replace people's economic greed with people's political greed? And that's a profound statement and absolutely true. Do you think that the people that are getting involved in running for office in general care about you or care about the average person? Or are they themselves corrupted by greed, just a different type? So we're going to replace the greed of the company with the greed of the government? With the greed of the corrupt official? Now, does this mean there should be no regulations? No, but they should be massively limited. And they've been expanded so grotesquely that it allows winners and losers. Look at our tax system, for example. How is it that Amazon gets away with paying so little taxes? It's because it's not that, Bernie Sanders, Amazon needs to pay more in taxes. It's because we have this crazy Byzantine tax system. The less bureaucracy, the less massive the government, the simpler the tax system would be. Look, a flat tax, you pay this. Or no income tax, there's just sales tax. Guess what? All those people, the CEOs of Amazon, the Bezos, every time they spend money, they'd be paying the same tax rate as you. That's great. Or maybe you set it up progressive in some way. That's fine too. Originally, income, if you look at it, was claimed by the courts to be corporate earnings, not individual earnings. So do something like that. I don't know. But the larger that everyone makes this, the corporations are corrupt, therefore we need a bigger government to tackle the corrupt corporation. And then the corporations say thank you. Because the bigger the government gets, the more we could pay the government off to take out our competitors, and we could make sure that they put loopholes in there for us. $11. Now, okay, so let me pause here, if you don't mind. Are you still with me? I hope you're still with me. Always a good thing to check. It'd be not good if I was rambling by myself here. It's okay, I have fun with it. Now, I've shredded these first 10, at least in my opinion. I think they come off as somewhat arrogant and smug, but let's give the benefit of the doubt. And so let's say I'm wrong and I was wrong to be as hostile as I was. But still, I gave my honest opinion on them. I could see in good faith argue, look, these positions were just trying to say, We don't like being demonized just because we're liberal. And we don't like the division and things like that. Okay. Fair enough. And remember how this started. Let me read the beginning of it again. Okay? It says, I'm a liberal, but that doesn't mean what a lot of you apparently think it does. Let's break it down, shall we? Because quite frankly, I'm getting tired of being told what I believe and what I stand for. Spoiler alert, not every liberal's the same, though the majority of liberals I know think roughly along these lines. Okay. Big hearts. Oh, help the poor, things like that. Okay, fair enough. You know, they're loving people. They don't like being told what they are, right? Number 11. I believe our current administration is fascist. Not because I dislike them or because I can't get over an election, but because I've spent too many years reading and learning about the Third Reich to miss the similarities. Not because any administration I dislike must be Nazis, but because things are actually mirroring authoritarian and fascist regimes of the past. Now think about this. Now this is a trick that you see quite often. Let me tell you a story. One time I used to be into metal music. I went to this festival in Ohio. It was called Sounds of the Underground. Like Guar was there. Hatebreed was there. I can't remember who the headliners were. But like metal music. Lamb of God I think was there. All these metal bands. And I got a little drunk. And there was a person from PETA there. And this person was having people sign a form. And I'm drunk, and I'm like, all right, I'll listen to it. And my friends are listening, and a couple of them signed it. And I said, what was that about? What was he saying the petition was for? It was about factory farms and the mistreatment of animals in factory farms. Fair enough, right? That's a noble thing. There's ins and outs, there's nuances, but in general, I agree. I'm a meat eater, as you can tell by my weight, I think. But yeah, I would like animals within reason to be treated as humanely as possible. I'm for that. My mother-in-law has chickens. That's where we get our eggs. We prefer humane, eat a lot of venison and wild game that was treated humanely, obviously. So, okay. So I went up to the petition and I read it, and there were 17 points on this petition. But what the guy was saying, hey, just sign this, it's about factory farms. Then I started to read it. Point 5 was that they thought pets should be outlawed. You shouldn't be allowed to own a pet. So I stood there next to this guy, and I was like, hey, wait a minute. The ladies that were signing right behind me, I'm like, do you own any animals? They're like, yeah, I have a cat. I love animals. And I was like, do you realize you're signing something that says you think it's immoral and should be illegal to own a cat? What? I'm like, yeah, read the fine print. And then this PETA guy's like, hey, man. And I started fighting with him. He had a leather belt on, which I found ironic. I explained to him that Ingrid Newkirk, who was the founder of their company, claimed that it was immoral to use medicine tested on animals, but herself was a diabetic that used insulin that was tested on animals. She claims that she had to use that medication to save her life. Sound familiar? Just like Bernie has to fly on private jets to fight for the climate. See? You're starting to see a theme here? Anyways, I ridiculed this guy until he went and got an officer, and the officer laughed and was like, okay, buddy, you should leave him alone. That's the same thing that something like this has. Now, the person that sent this to me, he said, hey, I basically agree with this list. I think it's pretty good. What do you think of this? This is a good person. This is a person who considers themselves a Democrat. They're not a maniac. We would quibble and squabble about those first 10, but I don't think he's a terrible person by any stretch. I think he's a good person. We just have disagreement on policies. But then they sneak stuff like this in. Oh, and by the way, Trump and his supporters are Nazis. And I don't say that lightly, says Ron Howard. I've studied the Third Reich, and I see the similarities between Trump and Hitler. Now, we're supposed to take this like this is a level-headed, calm response of someone who's aggravated that he's accused of being an extremist, when really he's just a loving person. He says that as he's calling you a Nazi. Do you see the insanity here? And I guarantee that Ron Howard and most of the people that are like, yes, this is an excellent list, they don't see the hypocrisy. They don't see it at all. What is it about Trump that makes him Hitler? What are the similarities, Ron Howard, to the Third Reich? Trump wears pants? Trump has a name, just like Hitler had a name? Both were leaders of their country? Oh my God. They both ate food? They both commanded an army? Oh my God, this is crazy. Just like Antifa. The people that are beating you or silencing you or saying that violence is necessary against you to shut you up are saying that you're the Nazi. You're engaged in Nazi-like behavior. They don't see the hypocrisy and the irony. Ask them, what is it? What is it about Trump or his supporters that are like Nazis? Someone please tell me. Someone told me? Kids in cages. Okay, so Obama was a Nazi. Because all the pictures we see of kids in cages, most of them are from Obama. No, that was different. Obama, he was put in a tough position and he had to do that. Okay. How about this? Trump's used his executive authority. Actually, Obama used executive power way more than Trump did. Yeah, but for good things. Okay, what about Trump pardoning people? Sure, Bill Clinton, Obama, they both pardoned way more people than Trump. Yeah, but that was different. I mean, it's outrageous. Nazis? Was Trump the one that had his FBI spy on his political opponent? That sounds like something an authoritarian fascist regime would do. Oh, that was Obama. Was Trump wiretapping journalists? Oh, that was Obama. Was Trump prosecuting whistleblowers at a record pace? Oh, that was Obama. Is Trump the one that was bailing out the bankers? Nope, that was Obama again. Ron Howard said above he's tired of paying for this warmongering. Barack Obama dropped more bombs than any president before him and won a Nobel Peace Prize. Now I heard people like Ron Howard and Bruce Springsteen and all these celebrities protest George W. Bush for his war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Where were they under Obama? But here they are back out in force with Trump. Heck, not only that, they'll come out and say when Trump says we should pull out of Afghanistan, we should pull out of Syria, that somehow that's a bad idea. So they're totally cool with the wars. They're fine with it. As long as it can be used to target Trump. If Trump wants to pull out of the war, then it must be a good war. If Trump wants to go to war, then it's a terrible dictator thing to do. I've had people tell me Trump's a dictator, he's like the Nazis because he took a photo. He took a photo with Kim Jong-un. That's terrible. I debated this guy called Destiny. He couldn't get over it. Can you believe Trump normalized North Korea by taking a picture with Kim Jong-un? But Obama sending pallets of billions of dollars in cash in the middle of the night to Iran, that wasn't a bad thing. That was good. Now, had Obama taken a picture with someone in Iran, that would have been bad. If Trump would have just sent billions of dollars to Kim Jong-un in the middle of the night, that would be perfectly fine. But you can't take a picture with Kim Jong-un or you're a dictator, you're a fascist, you're Hitler. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, that's where you can tell. So, okay, that's where we're at. Point 11, Trump's Hitler. And I know because I've studied history. When were you reading those books, Ron? When you were Opie on the Happy Days? Maybe Aunt B should have kept one more pie from you. Number 12. I believe the systemic racism and misogyny. Oh my God. Oh, here we go. I believe the systemic racism and misogyny in our society is much worse than many people think and desperately needs to be addressed, which means those with privilege, white, straight, male, economic, etc. need to start listening, even if you don't like what you're hearing, so we can start dismantling everything that's causing people to be marginalized. Did I tell you he was a cultural Marxist? Did I tell you above when we saw that? Systemic racism and misogyny do exist in our country, just like they've existed everywhere. And it is far better in the United States than almost any country in the history of the world. Will there always be racism and sexism? Absolutely. Does that racism and sexism go in all directions? Yes. Again, I'll reiterate for the billionth time. The ultimate oppressed, what we should do is focus on individuals. I believe in the message of Martin Luther King. I know there are plenty of people in the chat that'll say Martin Luther King was a bad guy. I don't care. The message of judge people based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin, is absolutely right. Absolutely. It is a truth. And you can take out color of their skin and insert their gender, or their age, or their ability, their geographic location, etc. In other words, we don't judge you by immutable characteristics you have no control over. We judge you by your actions. I don't care what your horoscope is. I don't care what your skin color is. It's irrelevant to me. It's just trivia. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me your ideas. Show me the type of person you are. That's what I care about. The more we say, oh no, certain races have privilege. The white people are privileged. All you do is make it endemic to make that situation work. Worse, you cause conflict. You think that you're going after, like everyone correctly identifies this. Well, it marginalizes white people that don't have these privileges. So somehow I have to believe that someone like, LeBron James, a wealthy black man, has less privilege than the white homeless man. Well, white's privilege. I mean, it's nonsense. So yes, we can see in that situation how that's disadvantageous to that white homeless person, but it's also disadvantageous to LeBron in a similar way. And people overlook this because you infantilize these groups. When you say you're an oppressed group, you're a victim, you treat them like a child. You're saying, there, we'll take you under our wing. We'll protect you. And I've told this story before. When I was in the debate community, I had certain people that hated me because I was, wearing metal t-shirts and, I wasn't what an average debater looked like. I didn't have high school experience. I didn't go to a wealthy university. I didn't dress like them. I didn't act like them. I was conservative, and almost all of them were liberal. Some of them hated me. But the ones that I disliked even more were the ones that pitied me. Don't pity me. I hate that. I don't want your victimhood points. Don't treat me like a child. While you're pitying me, you know what I'm doing? Busting my ass and beating you the next time I debate you. The number one motivating thing that ever happened to me in debate was the first tournament I ever debated. I'll never forget the names of the two girls I debated. They were from Liberty University, and they were the best novice team probably in the country. And for those of you that don't know, if you don't have high school experience, you start out at the novice level. And then after you win a tournament or two, or you're in the novice level for a year or two, then you bump up to the JV level. And then finally it's varsity or open. And varsity or open is the best of the best. It's almost everyone there that's good debated for 4 to 8 years in high school, and most of them are going to Ivy League schools, etc. I started off in novice debate, and, I've done this before, but I'm just sitting there and I'm like, hey, we're here to talk about nuclear weapons and the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. That was the first topic I ever talked about. So I do the first round, and it was kind of like a normal, what I would have considered debate. I walk into the second round, and my opponents start off like this. They're reading about nuclear weapons, but it's something like this. I can't get over an election because I've spent too many years reading the Third Reich in Michigan, not because the administration dislike must be Nazi, but because of things I actually marry authoritarian regimes in the past, and I think this systemic racism, misogyny, and society works on people taking the death for the needs to be addressed, which means a male, white, proud, macroeconomic, and you start listening, but you don't think but you're disbanding everything that's causing people to marginalize, non-interested, coming after you, but it's anyone, anything about. That's how they're talking, and I'm just sitting there with my mouth dropped, like looking at the judge, like, wait, what? What are they saying? And they dominated it. I couldn't understand a word they said the whole round. I'm just like, wait, what? No, nuclear weapons are bad. And we lose. And I'll never forget this. And I'll never tell this girl this to her face, but I still remember her name. And this one sentence had more impact on my life than almost any other one. She looks at me and goes, hey, you did pretty good. And then this was the sentence. Don't worry, you're not the worst person I've ever debated. And that burned into my brain. I was like, how dare you pity me? How dare you? Now, she'd been doing it for a year or two. After about a year, every time I debated that team, I smoked them. Crushed them. And every time in the back of my head, I was like, just say it to her. Say it. Don't worry, you're not the worst I ever debated. I never did. I never had the nerve to say it. But that motivated me so much. That's how much I hate being pitied. Don't you dare pity me. Hate me? You walk out of the room and not shake my hand, I'll be okay. I'll get over it. No big deal. But how dare you treat me like I'm a child? And that's what this garbage cultural Marxism does to these so-called oppressed groups. Oh, poor black people. They're just victims. They can't help it. We can't do things like look at the actual homicide rates in the black community because it's not their fault they're committing homicide. Garbage. Ridiculous. I'm going to treat black people like I treat white people. like I treat Hispanic people, like I treat people of Asian descent. I'm going to treat women like I treat men. I'm going to treat people in the LGBT community like I treat people in the straight community. I'm going to treat people in the Muslim or the atheist community the same way I treat people in the Christian community. I'm not going to say some of them are oppressed and so we have to treat them with kid gloves and they can't be held accountable for their actions and we have to have special rules for them because they're just special precious babies. But the other group are evil oppressors, so we'll go after them with everything. That's ridiculous. And that's causing intentional division in this country. So much so that they have to, that's why if misogyny is so bad, if racism is so bad, why is it that 95% of the time it's, okay, that's a gross exaggeration. Let's just say this. Why is it that many times when the big national story about racism comes out or about sexism comes out, it's a hoax? You know, like the Rolling Stone rape story, which was the UVA rape story, or Mattress Girl, or Jussie Smollett. I could go on and on. The Cummington kids. If we're in such a misogynist and racist society, why aren't these stories so prevalent? Meanwhile, oh my God, someone went in, where was it? Was it in a beer factory? Coors or Anheuser-Busch or something here just the other day? Someone went in and started shooting up the place. Here they went. The media's gearing up. Woo, who is it? Oh, it's a black guy. Who cares? It's despicable. It's disgusting. Yes, we all have stereotypes. We do. It's inevitable. It's part of the problem, like with labeling. It's who we are as humans. Having stereotypes doesn't make you a monster. Continuing to believe those stereotypes when evidence to the counter is presented to you makes you an idiot. You know, if I see a really tall guy and I'm like, he must be good at basketball, and then I meet him and he's like, I suck at basketball. I'm actually a computer nerd. I'm not athletic at all. Okay. But it wasn't wrong for me to originally have that stereotype. I adjust once I get more information. But these people that want to engage in the whole world is about racism and separating you based on whatever they can and making you a victim or making you an oppressor based on whatever benefits them politically and ideologically. It's ridiculous. I mean, I've actually seen, the show Penn and Teller Bullshit. Sorry for swearing, it's the name of the show. They had an episode on colleges, and they actually had this person who was a diversity counselor, and it showed he would get paid. Universities would be accused of racism, so they'd pay this guy like $80,000 to come in, and it showed what some of his lectures would be. It would say things like this: hey, you have to be understanding when black students come in late, because black people view time differently than white people, and they think that it's okay to be late. That's ridiculous. That's racism. I have people all the time tell me in the debate community, all standardized tests are racist. They're geared towards white people and not black people. Black people can't take these tests. That's racism. So, yeah, number 11 and 12, not looking so good, huh? Number 13. Let me grab a drink. I'll be right back. Sugar-free strawberry watermelon stuff. And that better. Number 13. I'm not interested in coming after your blessed guns, nor is anyone serving in government. Beto O'Rourke. What I am interested in is the enforcement of present laws and enacting new common sense gun regulations. Got another opinion? Put it on your page, not mine. Oh, so you don't welcome someone who disagrees with you. Got it. But yeah, I agree with you, Ron. Why don't we enforce the laws already on the book? So let's see. In 2017, the federal government, the GAO numbers, the Government Accountability Office, say that roughly 130,000 people tried to illegally purchase firearms. That's a crime. You know how many times the federal government prosecuted it? 4. Not 4,000, 4. All of these new gun laws will only be effectual to the people that actually follow the laws. Ron Howard, I'm sure, he just talked about racism, about systemic racism, right? So is Ron Howard telling me here he wants actually harsher laws for gun criminals if they're in the inner city? Is that what Ron Howard's telling us here? He wasn't for Trump's criminal justice reform? I want the laws on the book enforced. But I'm totally for the New York and the LA policies that basically leave people out without bail to go out and commit crime after crime. But I want the current laws enforced. No, you don't. You want them enforced against law-abiding people that you don't like. I haven't heard anyone trying to come for your guns. Again, a ridiculous lie. Maybe he wasn't watching Beto O'Rourke. Maybe he wasn't watching the Democrat debates. 14. This is a doozy. I believe in so-called political correctness. I prefer to think it's social politeness. If I call you Chuck and you say you prefer to be called Charles, I'll call you Charles. It's the polite thing to do. Not because everyone is a delicate snowflake, because as Maya Angelou put it, when we know better, we do better. When someone tells you that a term or phrase is more accurate, less hurtful than the one you're using, you now know better. So why not do better? How does it hurt you to not hurt another person? He just called Trump a Nazi. Just 3 paragraphs above, he calls Trump a Nazi. Then he says, but I believe in political correctness. Was he out there condemning Hillary when she called Trump supporters deplorables? I don't remember that. See, that's the thing about so-called political correctness. It's all about you have to call them what they want. You have to say what they want. They control it. They're allowed to break that political correctness anytime they want. See, Trump's rhetoric's bad. But their rhetoric's calling Trump whatever they want is good. That's how they define political correctness. That's the problem with it. Now, yes, is it societally polite if someone asks me to call them Chuck instead of Charles, or to call them Charles instead of Chuck? Of course. But that doesn't mean that it should be actively enforced or I should lose my job if I don't call them what they want. And it's oftentimes not that simple. This is a gross oversimplification. If you tell me to call you she when you're actually a he, that's a little different from Charles to Chuck, isn't it? But even still, if you asked me legitimately to do that, I would. But then the problem is the next step's taken that says, oh, and now I am a woman. No, you're not. I'll call you she if it makes you feel better. But if you're a jerk about it, I'm not, because you're not a she. And you don't get to choose how society views you. That's ridiculous. There are objective truths in the world. It doesn't matter how much I tell you, I'm not a supermodel. I'm not. If I tell you to address me as a supermodel, you might do it just because you don't want to hurt my feelings to my face. But the object truth is, I'm not a supermodel. I'm not a thin, muscular guy. It's not true. I could demand that you call me that. It doesn't make it true. It's not just you not being politically correct to say so. Jordan Peterson, this is how he got his start. Because in Canada, he said, I'm all for the idea of we should be polite and call people what they ask to be called, blah, blah, blah. That's one thing. But compelled speech, when the government says under some sort of financial or criminal penalty, you will be charged if you don't use certain language, that is a bridge too far, and that is the elimination of the First Amendment, the most important amendment. And we see how these calls for political correctness constantly lead to censorship of ideas they don't like. And things are called hate speech. And then you take Ron Howard's position here, I believe we should be political correct, which then goes to, I believe the First Amendment shouldn't protect hate speech, which then goes to, I believe we should be allowed to punch Nazis, and then ends with, anyone who disagrees with me is a Nazi and I'm allowed to punch them. Ask Caitlin Bennett, who tried to go to the University of Ohio the other day. How'd that work out? Oh, she wasn't politically correct, so bring out the mob. Who determines what's politically correct? Ron Howard and his crew, that's who. If I said to Ron Howard, Ron, you just said to be politically correct, yet you said that Trump and presumably his supporters then are Nazis, or at least Nazi supporters, his supporters. And he would say, well, yeah, but I think that's the abject truth because I've looked into it. And I'd say, okay, well, I've looked into it and there's only men and women. And of course, there's chromosomal, there could be anomalies, but basically that's it. So then by the same token, can I say there's men and women? So I'm allowed to call a man who thinks they're a woman a man? Just like you're allowed to call Trump who thinks he's not a Nazi because you think that's the objective truth? He'd say no. So would Twitter, by the way. Go ahead, go over to Twitter and say there's only 2 genders. Whoop, ban just like that. You literally can't say that in Twitter. Rapper / conservative activist Zuby the other day got suspended for a day because he was arguing with a transgender person and he said, dude, settle down. Boop, that's it. Not allowed to misgender them. But Ron Howard could call you a Nazi on there and he thinks that's still him being politically correct. Number 15. I believe in funding sustainable energy, Solyndra, including offering education to people currently working in coal or oil so they can change jobs. There are too many sustainable options available for us to continue with coal and oil. Sorry, billionaires. Maybe try investing in something else. Okay, Ron Howard, you've made your career in Hollywood. It's encouraged some of the most obscene behavior that we've ever seen, including violence against women, sexual assaults against children, people like Roman Polanski that's continually winning awards in Hollywood, who anally raped a 13-year-old girl, and then was praised by Hollywood for years afterwards as he fled the country to escape prosecution. You create movies that are just propaganda and at best are just entertainment. And billions upon billions of dollars is put into Hollywood every year. So why don't we take your money and invest it in green energy instead of the coal money? Sorry, millionaires in Hollywood, invest in something else, right? Oh, no, that's all cool for you, right? You guys are forgiven for all those sins. Meanwhile, as I've said 1,000 times before, when the government gets involved in doing things like backing one energy source, it makes it artificially competitive, which is bad, which means that it'll raise the price of fossil fuels. When you raise the price of fossil fuels, Ron Howard isn't the one who cares. It's people like me and you that actually care about the price of gasoline because we need cheap fuel to get to our jobs because we're living paycheck to paycheck. But Ron Howard doesn't care if we have to pay $20 a gallon for gas. In fact, if you listen to the green energy people, they talk about this all the time. We need to raise the price of fossil fuels. There's only 2 ways right now to make green energy competitive with fossil fuels. Raise the price of fossil fuels or subsidize the price of green energy. Both of them are a disaster. Look at Solyndra. Wasn't that what Obama was doing? Then his buddies got, what, $500 million he sent to his buddies that didn't create one green energy job? Oh well. Al Gore, send Al Gore your energy credits as he gets rich and flies around in jets and tells you you're a bad person? That's what we're supposed to do? How about this? Things are getting better all the time. Even though we haven't signed the Paris Climate Agreement, we're actually meeting what our obligations would have been. China's not, by the way, and they did sign. The truth is that renewable energy is upticking over and over in this country. As it becomes more profitable and more successful, more people will invest, and the free market will inevitably have a transition to the most cost-efficient source. The cost efficiency also determines what people are socially conscious of. For example, you're more willing to pay money at Starbucks for their crappy product because supposedly it's good for the earth, and they're giving money to coffee bean farmers that are poor somewhere. People make that choice. They're into that hipster crap, just like they will be with green energy. And so inevitably, green energy, the free market will allow it to be invested. Meanwhile, all of this hysteria about climate change is total garbage. Even under the most scientific estimates, we're talking about like a 1.5 degree change in Celsius within 100 years. It doesn't say it would be catastrophic for the earth. It says it would cost us something like 10% of our GDP. So their proposed solution is to spend 1,000% of our GDP. Does that make any sense whatsoever? And that's just if the predictions are right, which there's solid evidence that they're not. That things like sunspots and solar activity have far more to do with our climate than CO2 emissions. And we actually could be in for reductions in temperatures. A mini ice age because solar activity is declining. I don't know what the truth is. I'm not going to claim to be a scientist, but I know this. The same people now that are saying we're all going to die in 10 years because of climate change were the same people saying it in 2002 that by 2010, Florida would be underwater. Were the same people saying in the 70s that we were entering an ice age. It's always, how come every time it's always give them more power? We're all going to die, so give them more power and screw over the poor people. Always. That's always their solution. It's never them paying more. It's not Ron Howard stop flying on a private jet. Is it? It's never that. Oh, God. 16, and the last one. I believe that women should not be treated as a separate class of human. They should be paid the same as men who do the same work, should have the same rights as men, and should be free from abuse. Why on earth shouldn't they be? Who disagrees with that? It's them pushing the lie. They're the ones pushing the lie that 1 in 5 women are raped on college campuses. That's a lie. They're the ones pushing the gender income inequality gap. That's a lie. In fact, not only is it a lie because it doesn't compare apples to apples, I've seen Thomas Sowell shatter this myth way back in the early 80s. And he says the problem is, if you compare women that were never married to men that were never married, the income inequality gap almost disappears. The problem is you're comparing women that were in marriage, and if you're someone who, that means you're starting off later and you're doing different types of jobs, and there's all sorts of things, right? Women tend to work less hours. Women tend to be less likely to move to accept a promotion. Women tend to be less likely to ask for a promotion. It is currently illegal to pay someone less than you would pay someone based on their gender. That's illegal. You can't do that. If you're a woman right now and you feel that you're being paid unfairly because you're a woman, there are mechanisms for where you could bring lawsuits that exist right now. If it was true that businesses were paying women who are just as capable as men far less, then way more companies would be hiring women. And everybody intuitively knows this, because one of the things they always say about these corporations, as Ron Howard said above, is they're just greedy and all they care about is the bottom line. So now we're supposed to believe, well, all they care about money is money, except one thing. They care about one thing more than money, and that's men, propping up men. Are you out of your mind? But if that's the game you want to play, if the game you want to play is just look at the numbers, right? Don't look at the reasons behind the numbers, just look at the numbers. Okay, fair enough. We know for a fact, when you look at under the age of 35, women are outperforming men in almost every single area. They're getting degrees way more than men. They're getting way better grades in college. They're getting more prestigious degrees. They end up being paid more on the dollar than men for the same types of work. All of that's true for people like under a certain age, like 32 or 35. So if we're going to talk about gender inequality or the gender pay gap from 35 and up benefiting men, are we going to talk about it from 35 and down benefiting women? Oh, no. Are we going to talk about jobs that are the most dangerous that happen to pay men more? That deaths on the job are almost like 95% men? No. Not going to talk about any of that. I think he finishes up. I think that about covers it. Bottom line, I'm a liberal because I think we should take care of each other. That doesn't mean you should work 80 hours a week so your lazy neighbor can get all your money. It just means I don't believe there is any scenario in which preventable suffering is an acceptable outcome. Yeah, you do. Of course you do. Socialism is preventable suffering, stopping socialism. I can prove that case very seriously. What are you going to do? Once you enact socialism and it causes different people to suffer, no matter what plan you do, this is the terrible truth. You could say this about Trump. You could say this about anyone. Oh, yeah, I'll get back to the... I'm sorry. I will get back to I haven't looked at the results. I've been ranting here for an hour. Look at right? Take Trump, for example. I personally know people, I will just anecdotally say in my area, the economy is doing better now than it was under Obama. Is that Trump's fault? I don't know. I think he's had good policies. I think his deficit spending's been terrible, etc. But I also know some people that are doing worse. Take the tariffs. The tariffs are designed, China's been involved in unfair trade practices for decades. We've outsourced our wealth to China based on the labor of normal Americans. That's true. How do we deal with it? Are tariffs the best solution? I don't know, but tariffs are a possible attempt at dealing with that. Now, the truth with tariffs is there will be winners and losers. If you're someone who works at a company building cars in the United States, tariffs are good because we're not going to impede, it will possibly prevent outsourcing of labor to China. But if you're someone who's in an industry that relies on products coming from China, like, for example, or going to China, like a local wood mill. The wood mill around here is struggling because they sold a lot of wood to China. Well, the tariffs are harming them. So there's winners and losers. Now, that means that when Trump enacted the tariffs, he knew there would be winners and there would be losers. The losers would be, quote, preventable suffering. So does that mean we have to always prevent, if we see something that would cause suffering, we have to prevent it? Therefore, Trump shouldn't have done tariffs. Okay, but then the outsourcing of American jobs occurs. Well, but that's suffering. The solution leads to suffering of a group. That's life, Ron Howard. It's not that simple. It's not, we have one policy that's awesome and everyone wins, and then we have another policy that's just terrible and it causes suffering. That's not life. And the fact that you think it is proves that you're a hypocrite and you're exactly what you're accusing the others of doing. Here's what makes me a liberal. I like people, and I care about people, and I want suffering to end. That's how I define liberal. Okay, but the mere fact that that's how you're defining liberal proves that you're saying that people that don't believe that must be the opposite of you and conservative. Otherwise, you would say, look, I'm just like conservatives. I want people to do good. But you didn't say that, did you, Ron Howard? Because you are accusing people of being monsters, just like you're accusing people of the very crime you're saying you don't like when it's directed at you. So I promised my friend that I would give that little speech. He probably didn't listen, but I hope you guys enjoyed that. And by the way, that was all off the cuff. I read that once, but I didn't take notes. All up here, baby. So, all right, it's a shock to me. I haven't been reading the chat. I don't know who's winning. I'm going to check out Texas. Now, I'll guarantee this without reading anything. The media right now is definitely spinning tonight as a win for Biden. Wow. So if Biden won Texas, that's devastating. He's currently winning Texas with 29.99%, Bernie with 28.77%. I mean, there's no way to spin that that's good for Bernie. That is devastating. That's devastating. If Biden wins Texas, that's all she wrote for Bernie. I mean, theoretically he could come back, but he'd basically need a clean sweep. Because remember, if all Biden has to do is break even with Bernie, that's it. If he breaks even with Bernie and it leads to a broker convention, Bernie is screwed. No way the establishment picks him. None. So let me, oh my goodness. We'll see. I guess it's only 60%. I mean, I'll admit, this was my prediction going in tonight. Biden would do better than anticipated, which shows the power of the corruption of the media and how the DNC and the media, when they back someone, just how powerful they are shaping the narrative. So when they've done it for 50 years against the Republicans and when they're currently doing it more than ever against Trump, now you see why it's a problem. But I mean, what this really says is, Bernie and supporters, I told you so. You know, like I said, my prediction was Biden was do better than expected. But that's, if he wins Texas, that's even better than I expected. So, let me just think of my initial reaction to this. It would be, so I'm thinking about, I remember seeing around Austin that Elizabeth Warren picked up a lot of votes. Now, I'm not going to mention any names. It's not something I do. But I personally talked to 2 Bernie supporters in 2016 that are good friends of mine, who both told me they were going to vote for Elizabeth Warren. This was months ago. And I said, why? And they said, well, we like the progressive nature of Bernie Sanders, but we'd like to see a woman win. Okay. I said, be careful. Warren's a fake. She don't care about the progressive cause. She's there for the establishment. The establishment realized that Bernie had momentum, and they needed the Bernie voters. They needed them. But they wanted someone they could trust. Elizabeth Warren has no personal integrity at all. She's someone who, on a whim, can pretend to be a progressive and then tomorrow be the establishment corporatist that they need. Look at what she did with Medicare for All. As soon as the polling numbers said that people were upset that they would lose their private insurance, she backed out immediately. That's who she is. And I told my friends, I was like, dude, she ain't no progressive. She's faking it. Let me check the numbers here again. Elizabeth Warren has 11%. That means if I add Warren and Sanders together, had Warren dropped out, and all of the progressives would have voted for Sanders, Sanders would right now have about 450,000 votes compared to Biden's 412,000 votes. Warren chose to stay in knowing she didn't have a chance until after Super Tuesday. Why would she do that? Because the same reason that Buttigieg dropped out, the same reason that Klobuchar and Steyer dropped out. The DNC Who is it? Obama behind the scenes? Soros behind the scenes? I don't know. The people running the DNC, the deep state, the establishment, they told Buttigieg and Klobuchar and Steyer, you're going to drop out before Super Tuesday because we need to get behind Joe Biden. They said, yes, sir. They said, don't worry, we'll give you positions in the future. Don't worry. You got it. They have no integrity. They knew that there were people, they quit in a moment's notice. They still had volunteers out there working for them. They still had people donating money to them, thinking they were going to stick through to the end. They quit in a moment's notice. They didn't care what their followers thought. They didn't care it was ripping people off. Out they went because it helped the establishment. Elizabeth Warren, they went to her and said, don't drop out. You keep going until at least after Super Tuesday. We need you to take votes away from Bernie. Yes, sir, she said. There you go. There you are, Bernie supporters. I told you who Elizabeth Warren was. There you have it. I told you Bernie supporters, they'd screw him over. I did, didn't I? Now, I'm not just here to tell you I told you so. Ask yourself this. You going to vote? You going to vote for Bernie? Or are you going to vote for Biden? Or if they bring in Hillary or Michelle, you going to vote for them? Is that what you're going to do? Because Orange Man banned? Maybe in 2024 they'll let you have a voice. It's so ridiculous. This party keeps screwing me over. I know what I'll do. Get out and vote for them again. Genius. Say what you will about the Republicans and their stuff to criticize. They didn't want Trump to win. That was obvious. And he won. They set the deck a little against him, but he was able to overcome. Democrats ain't taking no chances. They're not going to let the mistake of letting something as pesky as the people decide. Please. You kidding? But you're going to go out and vote for them again. Now, I'm not telling you to vote for Donald Trump. I think I have good reasons to. I think that the most severe thing we should be going against is the corruption in the system. And even if you think Trump's a corrupt man, even if you believe that, he's not involved in their corruption, and his mere existence is meaning their corruption outs itself. So I think you should vote for him, but if you hate the man and you don't want to vote for him and you think he's terrible, that's fine. But why would you continue to support the people that screw you up, that build up your hopes, and then shoot you down every time? Why would you keep going for it? Why would you? But you will. And Bernie will get another lake house to keep his mouth shut. Vote for Jill Stein. Write in Ralph Nader. Do anything but vote for this corrupt Democratic Party. If you're really a Democrat, really someone who hates the Republicans and you're just like a pro-working party person, and you really hate Trump, you should be cheering for Trump to crush the Democrats in 2020. You should be cheering for the Democrats to get wiped out so bad that they say, you know what, we have to totally restructure. Let's actually listen to our voters. That's what you should be doing. It is so clear that the Democratic Party is so corrupt. They're so involved in identity politics that they are completely worthless at this point. Completely. I said it, look, and you watch my channel. I wasn't saying this at the beginning of my channel. I was not. But for me, it was the Covington and the Kavanaugh thing. Once I saw the actual people that lead the party in the Kavanaugh thing say that the entire cornerstone of our legal system, of innocent until proven guilty, the entire thesis of this country of personal responsibility and the individual and personal liberty is turned on its head, and it's now you're guilty until proven innocent. I said, I don't know how anyone in good conscience could vote Democrat. I don't know how you could. That doesn't mean you're evil if you do, but I think if you really stopped and thought about it, you'd say, my God, what does this world look like? Any accusation ruins your life now? That's it? Guilty until proven innocent? If you go against their ideology, you got the scarlet letter on you? You're unhireable? You're a monster? Like with Kavanaugh? That's the world you want to live in? They'll be corrupt. They'll screw anyone over with any innuendo and even false stories, like Kavanaugh running gang rape parties. They actually ran that on the media. The same media that's screwing Bernie over today. They ran that crap about Trump, and you all ate it up. About Kavanaugh. And it was obviously not true. They smeared Trump with obvious lies for 3+ years. You're going to vote for that again. That's what you're going to vote for. You don't have to like Trump. You don't have to become a Republican. But for God's sakes, take control of your party. Don't vote for them just because you're like Orange Man bad. You ought to be cheering for them to get crushed. I was cheering for the Republicans to get crushed when they had George Bush. All those corrupt wars. I wanted Ron Paul. When they screwed Ron Paul over, I was like, screw it. I ain't going to vote for John McCain or Mitt Romney. Are you kidding me? No way. And I had Republicans tell me how terrible I was for not voting for Mitt Romney. How's that looking now, huh? May I support impeachment Romney. Huh? Real good, huh? It took McCain and Romney getting a shellacking to actually get someone reasonable like Trump in there. Hey, thanks for the donation. I really appreciate it. What more do you need to see, Bernie supporters? Yes, there are extremists that I don't like within the Bernie camp. But it's not all of them. There are good Bernie supporters there are. Yes, I dislike socialism extremely and think that Bernie's policies are incredibly dangerous to our country. But I'm not going to crap on people that support him. Listen for a second, like Trump supporters or conservatives out there. These people, as angry as you were and wanting someone like Trump and being fed up, there are legitimately angry people on the left like that. There are, that feel that their party, Hillary Clinton screwed them over, Obama screwed them over. They don't care about certain Democrats. They don't care about young people. They haven't done anything for the black community. There are people that angry. They picked Bernie Sanders. I think that was a poor choice. But they had a righteous anger. They had a right to be angry. Just like we have a right to be angry at what the system did in the corruption. They're just populists on the left. We should reach out and try to engage with that anger and say, we're not saying you have to agree with us on everything, but we need to stop this corruption. That's what I truly believe. So I sympathize. I know I'm kind of saying I told you so, but I'm sympathetic. You made it went out there and put your heart and soul into Bernie, and you're getting screwed again. It's a direct repeat of 2016. And Bernie laid down in 2016. If Bernie wouldn't have laid down in 2016, if he would have said, this is garbage, I'm tired of this, I was cheated by the DNC, and made a ruckus about it for 4 years now, he would have won the DNC primary. Or at least he would have won it. He would have been a more successful third party. It's just... And again, I understand. We need at least 2, if not more, parties in this country. We do. I don't want to see a party where the Democrats are so bad that they never win. I don't want to see that. I would like to have 2 parties, even if I way agree with one more than the other, which I would. But at least 2 parties that legitimately care about the American people. I maybe just disagree. Like I just went through that list with you. There are things on there, like I care about people that need healthcare. I do. I just have a disagreement on how we get to there. That's what I would like. I would like to be able to look at the people on the other party and say, hey, we disagree, but I think that you mean well. Instead, we get this corrupt identity politics, cultural Marxist, oligarchical garbage that pretends to be progressive and pretends to want the Bernie people, but reality will screw them over at a moment's notice. Don't forget, the same people, all these people on stage that said superdelegates are important and we got to follow the rules. Hillary Clinton said that today. She said to Bernie Sanders, Bernie needs to stop complaining and just follow the rules of the system. This is someone who spent 3 years complaining that the Electoral College is racist. And she should have won because she won the popular vote. Now she's making the argument to Bernie. How dare you say the popular vote should decide the primary? I mean, it's laughable. The corruption is so transparent. They don't care. They're going to keep screwing you over and over and over again. They're going to. Vote these people out. Don't go to the polls. Stay home. Let Trump win 50 states to none. That would send a signal to the Democratic Party. Stop giving us Joe Biden. Stop giving us Hillary Clinton. Stop even, at least get someone that the people voted for. Now, I think if you put a socialist up there, you're going to find a hard lesson. People don't like them once it gets to the general election. But I could be wrong. But you're never even going to get to find out. I mean, it's It's unbelievable. Let's see what California ended up looking like. So Bernie, 28%. Biden in third with 17%. Bloomberg with 18%. Again, I think if Biden gets to that 15% number, then he gets some of the delegates in California. Now, this is early with only 28% reporting, but mark my words, the establishment will be thrilled that whatever they did caused Biden to get some support, and they will be demanding that Bloomberg get out shortly now. They don't need Bloomberg. They don't need him at all. Yeah. It's a rough one. So, yeah, everybody picking on me about the curtains again. I have a background now. Thank you very much. For those of you listening on podcast, I had some really bad curtains. So, yeah, I'm probably going to wrap up the podcast here now. Yeah, I hope what you like. So just the 2 points of the podcast today, we went through kind of this viral, what does it mean to be a liberal thing? And I hope that I shredded that. And then we did some stuff on Super Tuesday. And I would say there's still more to go, I guess, as I'm wrapping this up. But let's be honest, this is a big win for Biden. And it's a big... I told you so to Bernie people. And I hope the Bernie people realize that the corrupt system, as I said, as I've been saying, they're not going to let Bernie win the nomination. They're not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. The corruption he's facing, the last thing I'll say about this, if you're a Bernie supporter, the anger you feel right now at the corruption that Bernie's facing, why am I looking at the mic? The corruption you're feeling right now, and the anger you have at that corruption, that's like 1/1000th of what Trump deals with. So imagine, if you're mad right now, if you're furious, imagine what Trump supporters feel like. Every day. Bernie's not being called a Nazi. Bernie's not being called a rapist. Bernie doesn't have people leaking out of his campaign left and right saying this and that about him. Bernie doesn't have the Russia, he got a slight little taste of the Russia Oak stuff. Not every day. He doesn't have a special counselor going through his financial records from 2 decades ago. He doesn't have people around him being locked up for fake crimes. He's not being wiretapped that we know by the FBI like Trump was. So imagine the anger you feel right now, which I'm not belittling. It's justified anger. You're being screwed again. But just remember, that anger you're feeling when you made fun of Trump to people, and I kept saying, look, if you hate Trump, you shouldn't cheer for this corruption. There's other reasons to hate Trump. Call me if you're a Bernie supporter. I give you a bunch of reasons to dislike Trump. Deficit spending, wars, bombing Syria, maybe too cozy of a relationship with Saudi Arabia that's terrible, has terrible policies. I said deficit spending, but that's a really big one. There were things to go after him about. And other policy things that I might like, but you would dislike. But instead, you cheered for this corruption. And now it's biting you. And more than I'm saying I told you so, I'm saying stand up to this corrupt party. Stand up to the corrupt establishment. I recommend you support Trump, but if you don't, that's fine. Just don't keep supporting the same people screwing you over. It's insanity. So... I'll keep the video going for those of you not on podcasts, but for those of you on podcasts, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. You can find me on podcasts on Spotify at Normal America, all one word, or on iTunes at The Normal America Show. And if you're listening on podcasts, follow me on DLive and YouTube as well. Normal America on YouTube and with Rob Noor on YouTube, and then just Rob Noor currently on DLive. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a good one. Okay, we got rid of those crappy podcast people. Now it's just us and the YouTube and DLive people. Woohoo! Yeah, I mean, right? What all you think in the chat, right? Sorry I didn't get, thank you to whoever donated. I really appreciate it. Michelle. Oh, let's see if I can not butcher this. Mangiavillano? I hope I didn't butcher that. I'm sorry. Well, I definitely butchered it because I said it 4 different ways. Let's see. Let's go to Twitter. Let's see what the Twitter action is. I follow some Bernie reporters on Twitter, so I'm sure they're having a bad night. And one of the things I normally like to do is go and watch what MSNBC and CNN are saying on nights like tonight. I guarantee they're like, oh, Biden's the man, Biden's the man. And look, let me say, I underestimated Biden as well because I correctly identify, but I'm not here to just brag about myself about how smart and great I am. I said that I thought he was dead in the water, that I thought he would be easy for Trump to beat, with the caveat that the corruption will make again, they could put a log up against Trump, and the corruption that they'll have to try to steal the election for Trump is always going to be formidable. But yeah, I mean, what does this prove? It proves that you could be an infirmed old man who has no idea where you're at, and you could be president of the United States. You can. They don't care. You're just a puppet. You're just a figurehead. That's it. Good night to anyone who's leaving. Thanks for being here. Someone's still here just being corn-fussed. Hey, if you're on YouTube, follow me on D Live if you could. If I get to 200 people on D Live, then I become super cool. And I can tell my wife, like, look how cool I am. I had 200 followers on D Live. Now, it makes you like a partner or something, and then I can post regular videos on D Live as well. And the reason that D Live's important, I'll be honest, I don't like their, I think they need to work on kind of their format and things like that, but they ain't censoring me. So, let me say, though, to YouTube's credit, honestly, the last couple, not the live streams, but the last couple regular videos I did were immediately monetized, which shocked me because one of them was about YouTube being terrible. That still doesn't mean YouTube's not terrible. Just saying. But, I guess give the devil its due. And so, yeah, I put the link on YouTube there. I think I did, to my D Live account. Yeah, and you can follow me over there. And then I could give you lemons and things like that. You should be able to chat in D Live. Or is there something wrong with it? Hey, those on D Live, can you chat? Or something broke? They are losing a lot. YouTube? Yeah, I think you're right. But anyways, enough about that. Thanks, Frank. Yeah, you just follow me. You don't have to watch me there. But yeah, I mean, there's different stuff there. Thanks, Killer Cow. I see you're here. You're one of my patrons, so thank you. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I hope you guys like the show tonight. I'll still ramble on here until 1 a.m. or so. But the podcast thing, I'm trying to keep just slightly a level of formality around it. So I'll always, keep going after the podcast ended and just talk more on the level. But no, I had fun. I thought that was good. I like going through that thing. So here's Aaron Matei on... Oh! My Twitter just updated, so no. What happened to all the good people? Yeah, they're not going to be happy. These... and look, say what you will about the Biden supporters, but a lot of the Aaron Mateys, the Jimmy Dores, Michael Tracy's... Hey, man... They called out this Russia hoax. They did. I see Matt Walsh from Shapiro's show says, the Democrats didn't steal anything. Bernie's just so unlikable. That's partly true. I think the appeal of Journey, or the appeal of Bernie is overblown in some cycles, but don't act like the establishment directing their media in who to endorse hasn't played a big part in this. How else do you explain that it was Joe Biden? Anyone objective would say, this dude is stinking up the joint. I mean, for God's sakes, he's calling women dog-faced pony soldiers? I mean, come on. Thank you. Thank you for those of you who follow me on D-Live. I appreciate it. So, I mean, just insanity. Let me see if I can find... just try to read... I follow the Bernie people so you don't have to. Let's see what Michael Tracy says. I actually kind of like Michael Tracy. He says, and he's being realistic about it. So the last thing he tweeted is, Biden won 5 delegates in Vermont to Bernie's 11. Hillary won 0 delegates in Vermont in 2016. So Biden's even behind where he was against Hillary. And then Michael Tracy's like, look, those of you who follow this stuff every day online are just in a completely different world than 95% of the voters. Absolutely true. Most voters aren't the Twitterati. No exit polls in, this is Michael Tracy, a liberal. No exit polls in Arkansas and Utah. These corporate media outlets are awash in cash from fomenting Trump hysteria for 4 years and taking obscene amounts of Bloomberg ad money. But they can't splurge a few for a few more exit polls. Yep. Special congratulations tonight to savvy online progressive pundits who viciously maligned Tulsi for a year while playing nice with Liz Warren. Coincidentally, you are the same people who gave progressive legitimacy to Russiagate and impeachment. Time to name names. So you can see these Bernie supporting journalists, they're furious. They warned their people. They warned Bernie, stop pushing the Russiagate stuff. Stop playing nice with Elizabeth Warren. They did it. And now they're frustrated tonight because they backed a candidate that got stabbed in the back. I don't know what to say. It's predictable. But, I mean, I don't know. It's a mess. It's just... Let's see what's going on D-Live here. Yeah, make sure you vote in November. Right. It's absolutely important to vote. They're going to try to rig it. They're rigging it now for Biden. Just say this. Just please pretend, do the best. Pretend that you just are an alien and you just came to Earth and you've been watching kind of the Democratic primary for 2 months. You really don't know what else is going on. And this dude who could barely form a sentence is winning. When he goes out, his enthusiasm's so low, he's going to high school gyms and there's 15, 20 people listening. He's calling his own supporters dog-faced pony soldiers. That's the guy that's winning. He's winning tonight. So if you're objective, you'd say, holy cow, whatever this guy has behind him must be immensely powerful. If they could drag this feeble old man across the finish line, they must be quite powerful. And that's the truth. Don't get overconfident. Yes, Biden's terrible. The amount of corruption behind Biden is disgusting. The fact that they're screwing over Bernie and his supporters, that's not going to help him. Yet he still has almost the entirety of the mainstream media. He has almost the entirety of academia, the entirety of the entertainment industry, the entirety of Silicon Valley. Never forget, Professor Robert Epstein testified that Google has the ability to sway as many as 17 million votes in 2020. Because they control YouTube, they control what you see, they control what you hear. Yes, those of you that are more informed and seeking people out like me, regardless if you're on the left or the right, you won't be as influenced. But what about the millions upon millions of people that are just Googling and saying, hey, who am I going to vote for? They are going to be influenced. The corruption will be real. They're going to try to tank the economy even more than they're already doing. So it's up to us to do everything we can to point out the corruption of the establishment, to point out the corruption of the FBI and the media and academia and the entertainment industry and Silicon Valley, to point out Biden's corruption in places like Ukraine and China, to demand that they be held accountable, and to point out how insane they would be if they get elected. That's what it's about. I think there's a danger in the people that are like, Trump's got this wrapped up. That's my personal opinion. I think that's dangerous. I think that's what Hillary people were doing in 2016, and we saw how that worked out. We'll see. I mean, when I see you could read tonight as, oh my goodness, this dude, it's gonna be Joe Biden who doesn't know where he's at. That's who it's gonna be. That'll be easy to walk all over. That's a take. But my take is, my God, they're so powerful that they can pull Joe Biden across the finish line. And look, we see how powerful controlling the narrative is. Listen to how even the Biden supporters have been saying, oh, Bloomberg's trying to buy the election. Because they know that kind of money in politics is important. Remember, Hillary outspent Trump 2-1. They're going to have that huge advantage again. All the billionaire class are going to be voting for Democrat, putting money forth to the Democrats. We know that. So they have huge advantages. There's some interesting... I'm going to have to check out some of these threads on Twitter, but... Yeah, so... Alright, well, I'm done following it. I'll stay on here till 1. But yeah, I'm done looking up articles on Super Tuesday until I'm offline myself. Hunter won't be in Biden's cabinet till his second term. He'll be the point man for China and Ukraine. So, let me plug it. Was it something different tonight? I hope you guys liked me. What do you guys think of me going through the, I wasn't reading the chat because my system's messed up. What do you guys think of me going through Ron Howard's liberal thing? Did I do a reasonable job? I hope I did. I think I do good with stuff like that. Now, I just want to stress, just to brag myself up a little. It's all up here. No notes. Wasn't looking up articles. Wasn't looking up other people. That's, I get that. That's why I'm running for Congress. That's why I do a channel like this. I think that I'm gifted because I've debated and I see things in a slightly different way. I can kind of see what's going on in the underlying. Trump-Biden ticket will be fun. Yeah, I mean, we'll literally have a media cycle of grab them by the P word versus Joe Biden sniffing kids' hair. That's what we got to look forward to. So, isn't it funny? Isn't it funny how the attacks on Trump will all come? Oh, he doesn't like women. Biden could literally call a woman a dog-faced pony soldier, and they're like, cool, no problem. Not even a Trump supporter, his own supporter. Oh, my goodness. The sniffing hair stuff, I mean, come on. Does that mean that he's a pederast or something? I'm not saying that. But man, is it weird and uncomfortable. And then, at first I was like, oh, maybe once or twice. Dude, it's enough to be a pattern now. There's something to look at, So, tall girl's going to leave on D-Live. Yeah, people got to go to bed. I actually have stuff to do tomorrow, work-wise. I know. It's going to be good. I'm working with a new person tomorrow, and I worked with her today, and I thought it went really well. So that's cool. Yeah, Biden for 8 years, deal with it. We'll see. Be a lot of gaffes. Look, all Joe Biden had to do was not run. It was weird. Even in rural Pennsylvania, there were a lot of people that I know that liked him because there were these memes of just like Obama doing stuff and Joe Biden being his best friend, like coming in with pizzas like, hey, Obama, I got those 20 pizzas you ordered. And people thought it was funny because people didn't really know him. And then once he ran, it's like, oh, this guy's a nut. Here's something this is an important message. I should have said this on the podcast. It's a totally true, serious story. I don't know if I'll change one person's mind on one issue the entire time I do this YouTube channel. I don't know. Or D-Live or wherever. I'm all over the place. I didn't know if I would. I can tell you definitively today that I've officially changed someone from a Democrat to a Republican. I've done it. Today, a monumentous day, my wife switched her party affiliation. She was a registered Democrat. She was someone who liked Bernie. She has had enough. And so she went and she switched to Republican. I did it. Hee-yah! So all those times I said, hey, I could reach across the aisle. My wife's a Democrat. She changed her mind. I got her. I got it. I told her, I was like, I'm going to tell everyone tonight, you switched your party. Bam! Now, if I get the guy that ran my campaign, Tom, who's a Democrat, if I get him to switch Republican, that would be something. He was a Klobuchar fan. I was texting him yesterday. I'm like, oof, how you feel now? He's like, I guess it's Biden. He sounded real enthused. But I did it! So I at least got one. She's great, though. She's a great person. But I did it. So... yeah, what I was saying earlier is, I hope people like my channel. I hope I come at things in a slightly different way. And I got tons and tons and tons and tons to say. So let me tell you about some things I'm kicking around in my head. Do you guys know who this person, The Persistence, is? So he's this guy, he's a Republican, and he goes around and he cleans up California and he cleans up other places like that. He's actually coming to do a Republican drive near me in March, and I'm going to try to meet up with him. And I'm going to try to live film there. In order to do that, I will need new equipment. So I got an iPhone, and I found this like $250, it's a microphone, and it's an app. And what it does is it allows, basically converts your phone not just to film. I already got the thing where I could use it to film and stream, but it also allows me to just plug in the microphone to the bottom here and then hold it out, and it's like a high quality microphone. So I'm trying to get that by then. So all of your financial support is very much appreciated. But even if I don't get it, I'll do what I can, and I'm going to try to hook up with that guy and live stream from there. Talk to him if I can, talk to the people that are there, registering to vote, do my best to register as many people as I can. So that's something that I'm planning in the future. I also, inspired by Doug Ducote and American Joe, the first time I met them, they were doing a 48-hour Border Patrol marathon. And that's where they alternated who was on the show, and they had guests and things like that. I'm thinking that I'm going to do... I didn't talk about Tulsi tonight, Carlos, but I will here in a second. I'm thinking that I'm going to do a 24-hour marathon. And when I say 24-hour marathon, with the exception of eating, going to the shower, or to get a shower and going to the restroom, it will be me for 24 hours. I'll have guests on, but it's going to be me, 24 hours of me. And I'm going to do like a channel drive to try to raise subscription, and I'm going to have all sorts of people on. That's the plan. So if that's something that you're interested in, just let me know, and I'm going to try to make that happen. It might not be until May or June or something like that, but I think it would be cool just to prove how much of a big mouth I am and how much I like doing this and talking to different people and things like that. But I think I could do it, and it would be kind of fun and a little challenge to myself to see if I could talk for 24 hours. Probably be a lot of coffee, and I'm not normally a coffee drinker. So that's something to look forward to. By the way, for those of you in the YouTube chat, Carlos is a great friend of mine. When I talk about my friend that's really helping me with politics and that I kick around ideas with, that's Carlos. Great political mind, and I'm trying to get, when I go visit to his house, me and him will just stay around for 6 hours and talk about politics. I feel like if we had the exact conversations we have with a microphone sitting there, you guys would love it, because I think our conversations are the best. So I think it's someone who's smarter than me even that's talking about this stuff. I think you'd love to hear from him. So hopefully I can make that work out at some point. Just take my phone with me while I'm recording into the 24-hour. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, real quick to talk about Tulsi. Now, I admit I didn't follow her a lot. I saw she picked up 2 delegates in the American Samoa. That was the last I saw about her. And then immediately people from the DNC came out and were like, well, we're going to change the rules for the next debate because we need blah, 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 which seemed to be an obvious indication that they're going to screw Tulsi out of being on the debate stage again. Ridiculous, right? Tulsi actually is a true progressive that's running. I actually respected a lot of her foreign policy stuff to some extent, but then she sold out and she was a total hypocrite. Because even though she voted present for the impeachment, see, she suggested the impeachment investigation begin. And to me, that's an act of pure political cowardice. She could have been brave by saying this impeachment stuff's nonsense from the get-go, the intel community's corrupt, but she didn't. She said, no. She said, I saw the Ukraine phone call transcript and I'm not going to cheer for an investigation. Then, because she was browbeat by the Democrats, 2 days later, she changed her tune and said, yes, I do believe there should be an impeachment investigation. And then when it became obvious that it was in her best political interest to separate herself, because what she's doing is setting herself up for the future, and quite wisely, might I add, because she's getting screwed, and if the Democratic Party fails, she'll be able to say, look, the corrupt Democratic Party that screwed over people like me and Bernie needs to go away, and that's why you should pick someone like me to lead the way into the future of the Democratic Party. That's what she's setting herself up for. That message may have been believable if she didn't just days earlier recommend an impeachment investigation against Trump. And never forget, she also recommended an investigation into Kavanaugh based on the garbage story that just came out 3-4 months ago, where a person who was writing a story who was basically someone who was the opponent of Kavanaugh when it came to the Clinton impeachment, claimed that he was at a party once and saw someone grab Kavanaugh's penis and push it into a woman's face. One, that's sexual assault against Kavanaugh. Second, the alleged woman said the incident never happened and she didn't want it to be discussed and she wasn't a victim, but the media ran with the story anyways because they don't care about women or ruining women's lives by having the paparazzi come after them if it means going after Trump. They don't care. But Tulsi said that allegation alone was worth investigating Kavanaugh. So she's a hypocrite, plus she's engaged in socialist policy. She is a progressive. So as far as I'm concerned, she's a hypocrite. But yeah, it looks like she's getting screwed over again with the debate. And I didn't see if she picked up any more delegates. But yeah, that's my feelings on Tulsi tonight. I'll have to see what more she did and see if I could find out if there was other stuff going on with her. So yeah, the last thing I'll say is, so I got some stuff coming up. I'm going to be doing whatever I can in Pennsylvania to help the Republicans and particularly to help Trump. And I'm trying, and I say that not just saying, oh, I'm buddies. No, I'm going to hold people's feet to the fire. Ask yourself right now, what is your representative doing? I know most of you people here, I'm not, I hope there's people from all political persuasions here, but many of you are probably Trump supporters or probably Republicans. And we spend a lot of time talking about the problems of the Democrats. And yes, the people running the Democratic Party are corrupt, no doubt. But let's not kid ourselves. There are some like that in the Republican Party. Your McCains, your Romneys, your Jeff Flakes. But even aside from corruption, you should ask yourself a question of effectiveness. What is your elected representative doing right now against all this corruption? What is your elected representative doing right now to make your voice heard more? I don't think most are doing a very good job at all. And so get out there and run yourself or write your congressperson and demand that they speak up. The war is fought with information. It's not just votes anymore. It's not whose side has the most politicians. There are the corrupt establishment people, and their job is to keep people ignorant. And then there are us fighting the corrupt establishment. I come from it at the right. There are people on the left doing the same. I think there's more on the right, but I'm biased. I'm on the right. Our job is to wake people up to the corruption. The war will be won if they could keep the vast majority, right? We're just small percentages. Even those of you listening now, yes, more people are waking up every day, but we're small percentages. There is this vast millions upon millions of people that are undecided or disinterested. If those people stay undecided, disinterested, or ignorant of the facts, then the establishment wins. The globalists win. If we could wake them up to the amount of corruption that's provable, then we win. What is your elected official doing in that battle? If you haven't noticed your elected official speaking up, both in your community, in your local paper, or on the national level, on national media shows, or with social media, if you haven't noticed it, you might want to ask, what good is having that representative there? You might want to say, could I do better? Or could I vote for someone else that would do better? Or could I write this congressperson and tell them that they need to do better? Don't say, oh, well, they're the enemy of the Democrat and therefore that's good enough. That's not good enough. It's not. It's not a guaranteed job. No matter what people want to tell you. It's not just a club where, oh, the people that are there and you can't get in. No. It might be stacked against you, but we need to start to let these people know they represent us in normal America. They're not there just to make money for themselves. So get out there and do what you can. Thanks, Carlos. Yeah, it's great to hear from you. Right? Don't say, oh, we got it wrapped up. Trump's going to win in the landslide. I don't need to do anything. Remember, personal responsibility, personal freedom. What you do matters. It matters to the people around you. And not just the words you say, but how you live your life. You could show you could be conservative. You could have fun. You're welcoming of people with different ideas. You engage in debate. You have your own personality. You're authentic. You treat people based on how they act and not based on how they look. People notice that stuff. These people wake up. That could be the way you wake some of these people up. Well, this one side seems curmudgeon-y and they want to ruin people's lives for jokes they told in high school. But these people over here look like they're having fun. That's who we should be, in my opinion. So, just my suggestion. The last thing I'll see is beg for money and beg for subscriptions. I hate doing it, but hey, 41 likes on YouTube. Not bad tonight. Thank you all. You guys are the best. And ladies. So I'll beg for money again. Let me just say again, some of you have given money. It's incredibly generous. It's very nice. I have 5 patrons now. I have people give me money. Michelle gave me some money tonight. Thank you so much. I assure you, all of that money goes directly into my channel and directly into doing things to try to ensure that we end this corruption and we give normal Americans a voice. If you think that I'm doing a good job with that, I really would appreciate financial help. I'm not someone of a lot of means. I told you my story last night running for Congress. I didn't take one dime for anyone because I was basically because I was stupid, because I had this moral idea in my head that was like, nope, I'm doing this because I owe the people that are my friends and family that are blue collar workers. I owe them. So I wouldn't take one dime Not one dime from it. You know, so that's how I ran my campaign. Now I'm $4,000 in credit card debt over that. Wife not too happy about that decision. But so yeah, I'm not going to be as bullheaded anymore. I will take donations. I really appreciate them. I could use, you know, if you could come to my house and see, I'm using laughable equipment. I'm using like a cheap laptop I could find. The cheapest, you know, it right now as I'm traveling, I got the cheapest microphone and camera. You know, I've had some people be incredibly generous, sending me flags for background, sending me microphone equipment, helping me edit videos and things like that. So there's a lot you could do aside from sending me money, but the money would really help. So if you could consider donating with the super chat, the description's on the link if you want to donate with PayPal or Patreon and things like that. If you're on D Live, you can give me lemons, and I promise I'll turn them into super great fun time stuff for my channel. So no, I really do appreciate that. As always, though, if you can't give money, don't worry. I'm still going to do this channel regardless if I ever get one dime. I really will. I'll make it work. You know, the equipment and stuff, that could help my channel grow. But I'm here to stay no matter what. So you don't have to worry about that. You know, other ways you can help me is liking and subscribing on different platforms, which all the links are in the description. And you could just recommend me to some other people. I'd really appreciate that. I'm trying to grow my channel and kind of grow our movement. So yeah, one other thing I want to talk about, so that's my spiel on that, but thank you all. I really, really, really appreciate everyone that's given me any financial help, anyone who's given me articles and stuff to cover, anyone who's just shared some kind words, or even words of disagreement with me. I appreciate all of you that listen to me. I really do. Just a programming note, Thursday, I'm actually going to be doing a show. If you watched the Patriot Super Panel last night, there was a woman on there who's an immigrant from England. Her name's Susan Courier. I'm actually doing a live show with her, 8 p.m. on Thursday, and it's going to be awesome. And we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff that's going on in the UK. The lack of a First Amendment or free speech in the UK. We're going to be talking about Islamic grooming gangs and the corruption that went on with the politics and the police over there. We're going to be talking about Tommy Robinson specifically. I think it's going to be a great show. I think she was incredibly intelligent, and I was really impressed by her. And she's really someone that I'm really excited to work with. Immediately after the show, I was like, hey, would you be interested in working on something together? She's like, yeah, absolutely. So we exchanged emails, and she's gung-ho about it. I think that you should check out her channel, and I think that, you know, I haven't watched a lot of videos on her channel. I don't know, she might say stuff that disagrees with me, but just talking about what we're going to discuss on our channel, it's going to be a great conversation, just me and her. So check that out. It's going to be Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. It should be a really good show. Friday, I normally have off work on Friday, but I have to go out to a training, which is about an hour and a half drive. If you guys want to sit through crappy car sounds and me not looking into a camera, I'm willing to do a live stream on the way out and the way back, an hour and a half live stream where I'm just rambling about anything. Now, is it going to be gold material? Is it going to be something that I'd want to show to a producer of like, hey, here's what I can do? Probably not. The quality will suck. The sound will suck. You'll hear cars. You'll hear turn signals and things like that. But hey, if it's something that people are interested in, you know, I'll come. The Resistance. Is it the Persistence? Is that his name, or is it the Resistance? He's coming in. I saved the bookmark. 1 second, Carlos. Let me tell you. It's the Persistence. He says, I'm coming to Pennsylvania to register new Republican voters. March 5th, Allentown. March 14th, Pittsburgh. March 20th, Slippery Rock. March 21st, Butler. April 3rd, Emmaus? E-M-M-A-U-S? April 4th, Philly. And he says, when we win PA, Trump has won re-election. It's that easy. So, and Carlos, I'll send you, I'm sending you that right now, Carlos, via direct message on Twitter. So you could see that. But yeah, he's great. That's someone who's, right? We all have things that we could do to help the cause. He's someone who realized he could buy the merits of his work, cleaning up these places. The Democrats yell about problems. This guy goes there and actually helps clean them up. So that's someone that I'm interested in possibly getting in connection to and working with. But yeah, follow Persistence on Twitter. So yeah, the last thing I'll do here then, again, if people think that they don't want to hear me ramble on in the car, that's fine. So I got 9 people on D Live. I'll hand out some lemons. I give out this chest. All right, we'll know who the winners were in 25 seconds. And yeah, the last thing I'll say is thank you to all of you that stayed up with me till 1 a.m. 3 hours today. Look, there's one thing you can say about me. I'm putting out content. Who else does 3-hour live streams? Super Tuesday. Bam! And I got to wake up for work, too. So I hope you all appreciate it. I have a blast doing this. I have a lot of fun. Again, have fun in life. It's a great time to be alive. You know, have personal responsibility. Be diligent, but just take a moment to realize, you know, even if you're having problems in your life, it's great. It's a great time to be alive. It's great that we have a community. You know, there was a time in my life where I thought I was the only person who thinks like I do. I'm still the only person who thinks like I do. But there's so many like-minded people out there. And it's incredible that I know that I can sit here and ramble on and have dozens of people listening to me. It's really humbling. And it really does. You know, the more I do stuff like this, like I go to bed with a smile on my face. I really do. So, the D-Live people. We got Why Not 3D, Killer Kyle, Slanty Chauffeur Bear, and Johnny Rhodes are the big winners tonight. So, awesome. So, the last thing. Most people have left. That's okay. For those of you, and I probably will do a specific video about this. I mentioned this at the beginning, but I'm looking for someone who has even less of a life than me to, if you're watching a lot of my live streams, if you would consider time stamping when I change subjects. So, for example, tonight, maybe there'd be a timestamp on my introduction, and then a timestamp on when I'm talking about Super Tuesday, and then maybe when I'm talking about Biden or the corruption, and then when I went and talked about the Ron Howard list, and then back to Super Tuesday. It doesn't have to be real specific, but if you did that, I'm not asking you to edit or anything like that. I could then make that the number one comment on all of my streams afterwards, and then if someone comes in and they just want to navigate to quickly what they want to hear, it would be easier. Not trying to pressure anyone doing it, but if it's something that you think you'd be interested in, it would really help my show. And, you know, feel free to just leave a message in the comment section if that's something that you might be interested in. Even if you can only do it once in a while and you can't be committed all the time. It would really help me out. I would appreciate it. So, but other than that, thank you so much. Thank you to the people that donated. Thank you to the kind words. You guys are the best. It really means a lot to me. I'm going to try to put material out tomorrow, but I do have a really busy work day, so I'll see what I can do. And if not, I got that live stream coming up Thursday, and then I'll be going in the car all day, baby, on Friday. So it'll be interesting. I'll let you know more about that when I get there. So, all right. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it.